there are probably some cardiovascular benefits that you get from jogging that you don't get from walking.
Hmm.
Some that there's some grime that's built up in your arteries, and when you hit a steady jog,
Right.
it's like a plunge. It's more a plunger effect. You plunge the all of the
Yeah.
plaque out of your arteries. It sort of knocks it
Hmm.
loose. Whereas if it's even if it's a fast walk, it's moving around the plaque faster.
Sure.
Whoa, obstacle, but it's still going around.
Hmm. Yeah, I know nothing. I mean, at a certain point,
I'm
though, I
making
think
this up.
even
I'm
when
making it up. I don't know anything either. I'm just imagining how it might
people say
be.
running is so good for you, but then people get into it and they all just drop dead of heart attacks. Not
Right.
all, but some of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
I mean, really super healthy looking people, they just suddenly drop dead of heart
I
attack.
can't tell you how many people I've been walking behind. I walk behind them, they're jogging, and they just drop dead right in
Yeah.
front of me.
And you
And
to walk
it's
past.
more well. That's the irony is the only time I jog is because I have to jump over them, and that's kind of a
Right.
jog because you have to work up to
Who's
that.
winning that race?
Who's
I
winning
mean,
that race? I in the meantime I'm burning 600 calories and having deep
eventually, yeah.
thoughts.
I mean, after a few days, you'll get up to there.
Well, I think if you're it depends on how heavy you are, but if you are the heavier you are, the more calories you burn when you walk.
Right.
Yeah, so if you're a big fatty, then you walk fast.
For some
Then
people, walking is jogging.
yeah,
I mean, for some people, getting out of bed is like a triathlon.
it is.
Yeah. Yeah, truly.
Yeah.
Anyway, what are we? So we're talking mostly about politics today. Is that right?
Well, let's just do just go with it and see what happens. But I do want to talk a little bit about walking because I think it's the perfect thing.
Yeah.
Um, Walking is you can do several things if you do listen to something like a podcast or a book, and you
Mhm.
aren't thinking about dying like you would if you were jogging. And you're still getting maybe you don't activate there's some things that don't get activated, some of the health benefits, but you're still burning calories and getting your heart pumping at a
Mhm.
faster rate than normal, like 120 beats a second. Then I think it's pretty well balanced.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's studies on that that say that because I think most of the benefit of jogging or running in general decreases after I think they say like 3 miles or so. After that, you of course are going to get the benefit of longer fat burning and like a longer exercise. But as far as to your overall health, long term, your longevity, after 3 miles of running, you're not getting any benefits that you wouldn't get from walking. So
Right. That makes sense
it's really
actually.
it's mostly like a pride thing.
And
Like I can run this far, I can
right.
run this fast. You do feel good about yourself when you're running, but it's not actually
It's
going
a
to do
major
anything
ego
better for you
boost.
than walking. Or yeah,
When you get home from a run, you can strut longer.
yeah. If you aren't dead, yeah,
Yeah, if you are dead, if you don't die at age 47
right,
as a jogger with bad knees.
yeah.
There's this app called Sweatcoin. It's the sponsor of today's video.
That sounds dystopian.
You walk and
I don't like apps.
and you get sweat coins,
Yeah, I bet you do.
and it's free. You just walk and then you can buy stuff like coffee from their store.
From a virtual store or a
Yeah,
real store?
it's a virtual store and
I
they
bet.
send it
Yeah.
to your house. Phone cases, it's a phone case you can buy with your steps. So you're buying stuff with steps. It's pretty cool. I haven't bought
Man.
anything yet because I just downloaded it yesterday, but I wanted to have a good step counter, and I was hitting.
What's the benefit for them? They're just connecting you to like advertisers or what?
Well, no, you.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little down on the whole world as far as like what all this capitalism and like these new ideas are for. It just seems like I'm just getting blasted with another ad every time I turn around.
Yeah.
I don't like apps, or things like that
Yeah.
because it just makes me feel like I'm in a dystopian society.
I think that it's interesting because you and I think very similarly in a lot of ways, but it's sort of like we're slightly mirror reflections of each other. You're
Hmm.
slightly on the dystopian side, and
Yeah.
I slightly more embrace the dystopian and think it's a utopia.
I Guess our lighting is perfect.
Our lighting is perfect. Harsh lighting, soft
Make it
lighting.
a little darker. Yeah.
I put a pillowcase over my light so it's more diffuse.
Mhm.
And I'm drinking coffee and you're drinking beer.
Yeah, and like there was that whole thing we talked about before, right? In the Dark Ages, people drank beer, and then the Enlightenment or the Renaissance, they switched over to coffee.
There you go.
And you're a walker, and I'm a runner.
But actually, some of these things seem kind of
And
mixed
you'll step
up.
right over
I'm
my
not-
body on the trail.
Well, beer though was because beer can't have certain dangerous things in it, so you can drink beer and get your water for the day, knowing that you don't.
Yeah, that was the idea back then. It was just like a health caution, right? People on
Right.
ships, people. I
Yeah.
mean, your children. You can't have your dessert until you drink your beer, you little bastards.
Yeah, exactly. you had to drink beer, otherwise you
Mhm.
die.
I think a lot of it, like there's some the Belgian style beer that's based on what monks used to make, Belgian monks or like monks in that area. But I think that it was only that they were drinking beer because religiously they couldn't have physical food like bread, so they had to make their bread liquid. They had some religious
So
loophole,
they would just
They
get
get
drunk every
toasty.
day.
Yeah, God doesn't mind if you're, completely soused on your water bread.
You're
but
slizzed on Belgian ale.
it's that one slice of
Those
peanut butter
monks
toast
are
that he
slizzing
hates.
pretty hard, but thank God they're not eating Nutella on bread.
Yeah, he came down hard on that. That was a no-no.
Wow, those monks, they invented keg stands.
Even to this day, I think certain monasteries, like their primary income source, because you can see it like in beer stores and stuff, is like they advertise this is from these certain monks that sell it here and there. That's their income, is that they still make beer because they still drink beer the same way.
That's interesting. I wonder what things that are healthy now that we do, that we have to do because otherwise we wouldn't be healthy, will be exotic things that we buy at bars for $9.
Right.
9 sweat coins in the future. What will those things be? Like,
Yeah, I guess the only reason it's difficult to come up with something is because there aren't many things that we do naturally that probably are healthy for us.
what if it's just clean water? If it is the dystopian future,
Hey, I watch nine hours of YouTube a day, and in the future that was proved to be an extreme health benefit.
Yeah.
People,
Go to a bar and order a pint of clean drinking water
yeah,
because in the future,
yeah, I guess so.
it's all full of toenails. Those toenails, because you can't destroy a toenail. Did you know that? Indestructible. You can't. There's nothing you can do to
What
a
about
toenail.
with
It's like the
acid?
Ring of Power. There's nothing you can do to a toenail that makes it
Are
go
you talking
away.
facts or just your own?
That would be cool, though.
Yeah.
If that were true, that would be nuts.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
They would probably be more valuable. I think people would be growing them out a lot longer.
That doesn't make sense, though. That would be less valuable because there would be way more of them around. People would have
So
little piles of them, and I mean,
it'd be
it would
the
just be-
antithesis of money. Yeah.
It's like corpses. I mean, you couldn't pay me to buy a corpse.
Can't get
They're all
around fast
everywhere.
enough. Yeah.
I got a cemetery over there. I'm sick of it. Got more corpses than I know what to do with.
Don't get me started on toenails.
Don't get me started on toenails. Right?
The worst part of the corpse.
But I guess there are things like that. I mean, rhino horns are made of basically toenail material. They're pretty valuable. What if, you know how they put the pink,
It's pretty valuable.
well, you know how they put, this is not, I don't want to be cruel to animals, but you know how they put the pink stuff on the rhino's horn to protect it, to make it useless for its original
No,
purpose?
I didn't know that.
They-
It's like a permanent.
It's somehow a permanent coating which marks it forever. That makes it no longer useful for any of the things that it's used for. That rhino horn is used for. What if that creates some sort of bizarre future underground economy where it becomes
I
even
could
more
just see the
precious
black
and rare?
market
It's like the
having
pink-
like a
You
pink
got a
rhino
pink-
horn. It
Yeah.
would come into vogue, like it would
Yes.
be their new thing.
Yeah, yes.
I
Underground.
mean, this is. I'm not just
ragers
wearing
with
rhino horn. This is endangered rhino horn. I
Right.
mean, I'm not supposed to have this.
backfire. That would backfire.
Yeah. So has it backfired? I mean, that's a real thing.
I don't
I've
think
never
that's
heard of
a real thing, but they do put the pink coating on the rhino's horn. It
That's
hasn't
what I meant,
backfired
yeah.
yet.
Can't they just shave it down or something, or sand it?
Um, I don't think so. Somehow maybe it permeates. I don't
It's
know.
like it
I
going
think,
through the whole thing.
I think so. Yeah, I think it has also some sort of thing that gives it a half-life that you can measure. It becomes maybe radioactive. It gives it a radioactive half-life that you can measure with
If only, yeah, all
Schmargen
our countries
detector.
could trade nuclear arms for pink rhino horns, we'd be in a better scenario.
Got this giant pink rhino horn with 55 sweat coins.
North Korea's pink rhino horn operation needs to be stopped, and
Yeah.
Iran's.
Have you watched that documentary about North Korean gift giving? How
No.
for the last 20 or 30 years, the only way that the leaders of North Korea have been able to maintain their power is by upping the gift giving to their top leaders. So
Really?
yeah, and each gift each year has to be better, or else it starts to create discontent in the higher ranks of the government. So the reason that the whole structure stays in place is because all of these top leaders every year they're getting some new great thing.
Is this something below like Kim Jong Un,
No,
or like he himself has to give
he had
these?
him
Because
and
I mean,
the top,
he just executes people, right? With
well, his father
anti-aircraft
is the
guns.
one who started it.
Okay.
But the problem is the gifts were getting more expensive. There's a documentary about it on YouTube. It's pretty great. The gifts started getting more expensive, so they have a team of people that go around the world and just look for crazy shit to buy for their top level people they want to honor. Besides giving them
That
houses
must be
and
pretty
cars.
tricky because I mean, you either are getting a gift for Christmas or you're going to get executed, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're either hoping to be extremely impressed or die. It's like a
Yeah. Yeah, but it's precarious on both sides, right? On the part of the leader, you have to up it, otherwise the whole circle is going to turn.
It just seems extremely tricky because it's like you better really impress me or kill me, either one.
Let's try to break that down, though.
I guess it would have to be people probably that are in charge of certain things that are more or less valuable.
Why don't
right?
you take the side of the person receiving the gifts, and I'll take the side of the dictator. If I'm a dictator, my calculation would be, I know that you guys talk to each other, and so I'm a little stressed because I know that if I buy one of you a great gift and the others have a mediocre gifts, that's gonna spread. And if there's no clear reason why one of you got a great gift, then that could cause discontent for everyone else. So I've got to find dope gifts for everyone involved, but I also have to think about how to pay for it. But it can't be so high that I'm not gonna that I can't, outdo it the next year.
It sounds very
So
complicated.
that's stressful.
Yeah. I mean, it would just depend on what the people are doing for him, right? Because you can't be a person in power without henchmen that you can rely upon. But then you also can't be feared without like just being able to execute anybody. So it's a really tricky line.
Yeah. Yeah, it is very tricky. But I'm always very interested in why there are dictators and then people beside them don't just whip out a Glock and execute them on the spot.
I think it just takes a very special individual to be a dictator. Well, unless you're just born into it, like Kim Jong Un. But I'm just reading Hitler's biography by John Toland. It's like one of the main ones. It's like 900 pages. I just saw it at Goodwill, and it was like $1, so it seemed like a good idea to read.
I just bought one on the Third Reich. I haven't read it yet, but it's about 56 hours. It's gonna be long.
Yeah,
that's about as this.
That sounds
as long
interesting.
As the whole Bible was.
You're going to be informed after that. But yeah, I'm only up to like the beer hall rallies, like when he's first finally coming into his own after kind of a lifetime of not really living up to very much and being very frustrated. But it seems like he always knew there was something different about him. It's like he had a calling for something very dark, but it was special, and he actually realized it. And he got to this point, and he kind of exploded through it. It just seems.
But he didn't always know what it was. He just knew that he had to. It wasn't a grand scheme from the beginning. He was just following a sort of an intuition.
It's really interesting. I mean, like when he was in Vienna trying to be a painter, and he was living off basically some family money, I think, from when his mom died. he just he lived on it as long as he could, and his paintings weren't successful, and then he just allowed himself to fall into like complete poverty, like living on the street. I mean, sleeping in doorways, like during winter, no coat or anything, like begging for food. He wasn't very good at begging, so he ended up going to these um, just like halls for basically probably just homeless men at the time. And then it was some other person that lived there that recognized his talent in painting, because Hitler could have been painting postcards and posters and stuff to make a little bit of money, but he didn't even have that will to do it. It's like
It was an all or nothing. He wanted to be an artist or
basically,
nothing.
yeah,
He didn't want to.
which I can I can relate
respect
to.
that.
I have that struggle. Yeah, it's
'Cause
not my struggle. my my comp.
I think
No.
a lot of people, a lot of artists feel that way.
Yeah.
I didn't get interested in this to just mass produce a bunch of
What's
bunch
weird
of
is like it's
crap.
if I can't do something that's as grand as what I assume I'm worth or deserving of, then I would rather just die and sleep on a bench.
Right.
So some other guy that he was living with said, "Well, you can paint well enough that we could be selling postcards." So this other guy would go out and hustle in like other beer halls or just places around the city, and Hitler would just sit and like paint just all day, and he would never say anything to anybody. He was just kind of a nice, congenial guy until something about politics would come up, and then he would get kind of embroiled in it and start arguing and ranting. He'd always had the ability to just go on a complete rant. And then as soon as the conversation was over, somebody broke it up, he would just recede back into painting. But obviously, he ended up doing terrible, horrible things. I'm not trying to say anything good about what he did, but he's a very interesting person. It's just,
Well, I think it's interesting that that does usually have to be qualified at the beginning of every Hitler conversation, but
right.
also people need to acknowledge their own interest in Hitler. I mean, look at all of the TV shows about Hitler. It's an entire economy
Yeah, I
around
almost wish
Nazis.
to retract my qualification that I just gave because
No.
in the reading of it, like, well, actually, I mean, because I believe in causality, I don't think anybody can be blamed for what they do. They are an interesting thing that occurred. It's like if you see a pond or a stream or something that has a whirlpool, you see the placid water, but if there is a whirlpool or something going down, you're like, what is that phenomena that
Yeah.
all these things are being churned into? I mean,
Right.
that's where your interest is drawn. And certain characters through history, based on their makeup and all these random factors, tend to coalesce into these basically what could be considered a vortex, and everything's churned through it.
There's
And that's
nothing
kind
wrong.
of what Hitler is.
There's nothing wrong with clarifying or qualifying something, because then there is the
Mhm.
odd person who listens to what you say and jumps to a ridiculous conclusion, right? Because
Mhm.
there are so few people.
Oh, you're
who...
saying Hitler wasn't so bad. You're a Nazi.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You didn't mention that you're against Hitler, and you said you're interested. So that must mean that. So there's nothing wrong with saying, just to be clear, blah blah blah. There's nothing wrong with it. But I think also people have to recognize that they can be interested in Hitler, and media proves that out. I mean, look how many Hitler movies there are, Hitler TV shows, finding Hitler. There's an entire industry around Nazis. So
People
it's
have more of a
undeniable.
curiosity,
It's
and
interesting.
there's probably different reasons for it, yeah, because people have a lot of morbid curiosity. I mean, look at the popularity right now of crime shows.
Yeah,
Like
which is
Netflix, it's nothing but crime shows.
Well,
Have you
that's
noticed
totally, but it's totally natural. I mean, there's you have to. It's sort of like I've been reading a lot of Jung recently, and
Oh, yeah.
there's so much interesting. He's so logical. It's amazing how logical he is, and how he's able to set aside the sort of segment his different projects. So he'll talk about a case, and you get so lost in the case that you forget that he is going to be analyzing it. He writes it in a way that you just think, oh, well, he just thinks this is true. What
So
is Jung crazy?
as an observer, he's like absolutely objective.
When he was describing this girl who had these, who was a medium, she claimed to be a medium, and she would have these. She would fall asleep, and then she would wake up as another person channeling her grandfather. And the description of it, I got so lost in Jung's description of the beginning part, which is a huge section. He just lays it out for pages and pages and pages, that I thought, well, Jung just believes this is true. And I'm a little bit convinced by this is really compelling. And then he stops, and that's the end of that story. And then he just rips it to pieces.
Rips it to
He
shreds.
destroys it. But
And he didn't play it up at all. It was
no,
just an accurate description in the first
I
part.
think that's why Jung is such an important figure, because that's a thing that I didn't realize before. But there's an idea in Jung that of the shadow, right? The shadow is this thing that everyone has inside of themselves. And if you try to pretend you don't have a shadow, or you hide, or cover it over with makeup, or just say, oh, it's not there, then you actually can't become an integrated individual. But if you recognize...
Or perhaps you're more of a dangerous individual. Maybe if, like, say, Hitler himself had known his own shadow, he might not have been as certain as he was about his own ideas about the world.
I think that's a big part of it. If you don't recognize your shadow and don't come to terms with it, then people say you're a good person, but you're only a good person because you happen to be in a society that is generally easy to be good in. But as soon as things change and suddenly you're in Nazi Germany, then all of the non-integrated people who haven't recognized their shadows are suddenly Nazi soldiers, and they're willing to just say, oh, okay, I guess I'll do that.
Wouldn't be a good podcast if we didn't bring up Jordan Peterson, but I do think that's the most valuable thing that he's contributed.
But he just
in his rise to fame.
That's just ripped from Jung, though. That's just
it is. But he's popularizing it in a way that would never have been on the internet.
Fair point.
So it's, I mean, for all these people, like, because I think at the time when I first got into Jordan Peterson, which I'm not so much into him that much anymore, but
me too.
I had a lot.
I mean, me neither.
Yeah, and me neither too. But
me neither as well, Gabe.
As well as such an but.
And moreover,
just the whole left wing stuff that was going on at the time in New York, and like thinking about how terrible certain maybe capitalistic elements are, or like say people that are against Donald Trump. There's like all that stuff of people being against the status quo. I did feel like a lot of hatred in my heart towards it, and I could see like it'd be nice to get into the idea of just completely destroying it. So Jordan Peterson came along at the same time, and I kind of tempered my own hatreds by thinking, well, I've seen what's happened before when people feel these things, like in Russia or like in Nazi Germany. And obviously it doesn't lead to something good. Maybe sometimes it's necessary, but just seeing what's happened historically, question yourself.
Yeah.
And realize that you have a dark side, and you're not actually like people, social justice warriors and that type, they think that they're extremely idealistic and they have these high virtues, which most of the time it does rest in some sort of hatred for the other that they feel as well. So
yeah, there's an instability in the way that it comes across. There's a nervous, unstable energy. Like someone who says that they overdo it, and they say how much they like you and how great you are, and then you say one thing that somehow throws that off balance, and then they say they hate you and they want you to die. You can see it. You
should be fired from your job.
It's like a toggle. You can just flip it off. You know when that person comes at you that you've got an unstable person.
It is like the whole. We do live in like a new like form of scapegoating culture too, where we categorize and label people as the problem.
Yeah.
Anybody that's a Trump supporter is obviously evil and a Nazi.
I want to get to that because...
Or the same on their side, I mean, the other people would be cucks and libtards, and they're not. Yeah. I mean, they're...
Libs.
Sick.
Hate them. Sick. Whereas, but that also isn't an argument for middle-of-the-road thinking.
That's true.
That shouldn't be misconstrued as, oh, therefore you must somehow be politically neutral. That in case anyone would think that you would think that's...
Well, it depends on what the truth is.
Yeah.
Right. I mean.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I want to. There's a point I kind of want to finish, but because I've almost completed the circle. I've come around, and I think
you're
I'm
segmenting
here.
this into video cuts, aren't you?
No.
But anyway, complete the circle.
I will.
Is that Joseph Campbell or Wagner, or what are you talking?
I did read Hero of a Thousand Faces. It's really good. Campbell's, yeah. It's great. It's really great. I read it twice in a row. I strongly recommend that you read it.
Yeah?
Yes.
As in Audible?
It's great. Audible, book form, whatever.
Okay.
It's really, really good. It's really good. And I think it'll give you some interesting thoughts. Maybe we can talk about it then. Anyway.
It's been Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a great agreement between Jung and Campbell. They would have been best friends if they had been best friends.
Because of like our archetypes, or
Yeah, it's almost like Jung went this far, and then Campbell said, "I'm going to take this in the direction of myth even further," because Jung was very interested in myths, and he used myths sort of to orient his thinking, and used myths as a way to sort of explain his thinking. But Campbell is all in on myths, and he's trying to explain myths with Jung ideas. So it's sort of like almost a pair. The two of them are a pair. They work together well. Yeah, but the shadow thing. So I think if the integrated person has acknowledged a shadow and then looked it in the face and dealt with it and knows exactly what it is, then that sort of person in a Nazi Germany situation will be able to walk in a straight line when there are all kinds of things sort of buffeting them, different political forces and social forces. That kind of person understands what this is a little bit better and what this is a little bit better, because they know who they are. But that shadow thing, I think part of that is probably evolutionary, that we have a bloodthirst deep inside, and we want to be tribal. We want to go to the other village and just kill everybody and take all their sheep.
It's because it's happened before.
Because that's what it's sort of like an ancestral memory. It's an instinct. It's the reason.
That's probably what explains a lot of people's interest in Hitler, right? They recognize something of themselves in him, maybe to a degree, or into what was done, or they might just think of themselves as one of his victims, I guess, too. But
it's almost that morbid curiosity is almost the same kind of thing translated into modern terms. It's the same reason that the gladiatorial games was so popular in Rome. Whenever they would cancel the games for a short period of time, the Romans would just go nuts, and there would be all kinds of fights in the streets, and there would be a lot of violence and muggings. But as soon as they did as soon as they had the games, the bigger the games were, the more people who died in the arenas, the more peaceful the streets were, because seeing them sort of allowed for that deep dark thing, whatever it is, to sort of express itself.
That would be a decent argument if what they were doing was fiction, right? But it's still probably the same amount of violence occurring, actual violence, right?
But it's almost like
events.
Here are a series of 8 things that need to be satisfied in a normal human being. One of these has this a kind of savage darkness, maybe, whatever that is. I don't know. It's like a socket, and if that is empty, maybe there's something that's missing. And so the curiosity in a crime show, the curiosity in learning about Hitler or serial killers or something, maybe is some way to satisfy that thing that is part of the natural, normal, balanced human psychology. Or going to a gladiator.
Could be. I mean, like religious people would just say that there's some sort of craven, fallen, inherent evil in being a lesser than full spiritual being. So it's your separation from God and true goodness that makes you want to delve into this dark underbelly, which you should turn your eyes away from sin.
No, but Gabe, no,
I'm just saying that's what they would say.
The religious, though, love it even more than anyone else. The reason that hellfire is so grotesque, the reason that Dante's Inferno is so insanely dark, is because that is an expression of that. It's an acknowledgement of that without being harmful. So, no, I don't think I'm not saying it should be harmful. I'm just saying that's maybe why we have an interest in it. Otherwise, Dante's Inferno would be really boring, because Dante's Inferno it's basically just gore porn for the first many pages.
Well, I think we talked before about the contextual being, like, I mean, all the things we appreciate perceptually require like contextual relatives, or hot and cold, up and down distances, black and white. Yeah. That's what I meant to say, I guess. But yeah, just picturing like a contextual box of existence, there have to be these opposites, or this like scale between things for there to be perception. Otherwise you wouldn't be in a point in space if there wasn't like a field of space. So, but I don't know if that explains, I guess that's completely different, but
on the Christian church thing, that has to be there.
I wasn't really referencing the Christian church. I would just say
Oh.
like people to talk about like goodness or like what it is to be like a soul or something. Like what it is you should be. Like you should turn your eyes away from such things, or you don't actually need those things. Do you think what is beneficial to delving into like darkness, or
Um,
does it serve to exemplify the light or the good?
I don't know. I don't know if it has any moral significance. I think it may just be
Well, it's got to have moral
part of
significance if it's about violence.
part of the psychological diet, maybe. You know, a sprinkling.
We just
a
need
sprinkling
to
on the
exist
iceberg
at all
lettuce.
the levels of the scale. Maybe like to appreciate the one end of the scale, we need to know about the other or something. I don't know.
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I think it's just something that we have we have a need for certain nutrients, right? And so we crave salty things because
Mhm.
our bodies are telling us something that we don't maybe fully biologically understand, right? That there is a deficiency or there is a need for a certain for sodium. That
But yeah,
the
there's a
body needs to
scientific
have.
answer.
There's a
Right, to
scientific
what we
answer
need
to your
there.
question. So
yeah, the
I'm
question is
saying
like what.
like there's a thing here, that box that needs to be ticked for some deep biological reason, deep ancient old school biological reason, maybe that started when we were just warring tribes or whatever, and an unticked box may lead to real violence, and that maybe would
I don't know.
explain
I just
why.
wonder if there's probably no argue for it as a necessity because you're saying it's either got to be superficially done or there just has to be violence.
I can't think of a culture that doesn't have horribly violent movies or anime or video games or practices that represent violence. I can't think of one, and why would those be there at all?
What about the Mennonites?
Um,
They just grow flowers and vegetables and stuff.
yeah, but
And
we don't know what really happens in the
well,
backyard.
maybe what if in the backyard those fields don't grow because there aren't bodies decaying in them?
Well,
Is that what
that's
you're
why
saying?
the corn grows so fast. Because
Yeah. The cornfield at one particular spot was in the shape of old disappeared Jebediah.
Well, this corn sure does taste like Jebediah used to taste.
Before he was murdered.
Before he went to another village.
Yeah, these are all interesting questions. I don't know.
I don't know. I just can't think of an example of a culture that doesn't have some celebration of violence. Not celebration, but some spice of violence in the diet that it consumes. You know, Japanese culture definitely very violent anime it shows. American
We're the perfect
movies,
spiritual
violence.
being. We're just we're broken vessels yet to be perfected. And if you were an actual perfect spiritual being, you wouldn't seek such craven things.
But I don't think that it's something to be ashamed of. It's no harm to anyone.
Well, of course
being
you
interested in things, right? What's wrong with it?
A lot.
No one's being hurt making a movie where people are
Well,
killed.
somebody
and
had to
enjoying
be,
that.
otherwise your interest wouldn't have been drawn.
I know, but if I see a movie that's not even a real, nobody's actually being hurt. In fact, stunt doubles are being paid
That's
because
true.
of that.
Yeah.
I'm only helping by being interested in violence.
More fictional violence. That's what we need to advocate for.
Yeah, I agree. I would say yes to that.
Speaking of something like this, I was listening to NPR the other day, and John Waters was on. They were doing some sort of career retrospective on him, which I've never seen any of his movies, but I'm kind of familiar with his whole shtick. You're familiar?
I don't know his shtick.
Pencil thin guy, John Waters. You know what he looks like? He's got, a pencil mustache. He's kind of skinny, creepy. He made Pink Flamingos, which is like a classic 70s shock movie.
Shock.
Yeah. Hairspray is another movie he made. He's considered like a connoisseur of filth. He just wants to just throw filth on the screen in order to get a reaction out of people. That's his whole thing.
Okay.
Anyway, he was talking like
I'm looking at the guy.
They're like, so in your movies you have show a lot of violence, but in real life you advocate for nonviolence. And he said, yeah, I mean it's completely different. For it's violence is compelling, and in movies it's one thing, but in real life I just absolutely hate violence. So I was reading about him, and I thought that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, that sounds
Then I
pretty good.
saw that in Pink Flamingos, there's a scene where two characters. It's like a really, I guess, gross, disturbing movie. But there's two characters, obese characters, having violent sex with each other, and in the process of it, they're strangling a chicken for their own like amusement in between them.
Hmm.
But so when they filmed the movie, they did that with real chickens,
Hmm.
and they did it like 8 or 9 times, and killed
Hmm.
like 8 or 9 real chickens.
Hmm.
It's like, well, that sounds like real violence,
Yeah,
John
that
Waters.
sounds
I
like
mean,
real violence, John Waters.
yeah, I wouldn't shake his hand. That's you can't kill chickens like that, or you shouldn't.
But
Anyway, that's a
that is,
side topic. But
yeah, no, but that's a good point. So if you found out, if you were watching a movie, putting aside the thing about why are we interested in violence,
Mhm.
I think it's kind of a human universal. But if
Right.
you say this happened in a movie and it was a stunt and it's CGI, then there's no downside whatsoever. Like a violent video game, nothing bad is happening. Your negative energy is being channeled into a digital space where nobody's being hurt, and
Mhm.
you're able to explore um, possibilities that you maybe that aren't healthy to explore in real life. Shouldn't be even considered. But you're able to do those things in a game. It's fun. Maybe it satisfies. Maybe
Mhm.
I don't think there's a lot of evidence that shows that playing video games is somehow causes people to be more violent, unless they're
Yeah, usually
really little
not.
kids. Yeah,
I think that Lanza kid is the like one exception.
yeah.
The Sandy
Might
Hook
be
guy.
very few exceptions
Right.
to that, but
I don't
all
know.
sides are benefiting. A company is making money. Stunt doubles are making money. Everything. Nobody's being hurt. Nothing is wrong with that. But as soon as chickens start dying, then the conversation changes. If you found out that
Yeah.
if you found out for that uh, that killing someone in a video game somehow resulted in something negative in the real world in any way, then the whole thing would have to be re-evaluated, probably.
Yeah, I really don't even know where I stand on the whole topic of like censorship in art, or I guess I'm against censorship in general, but more about propping up something as art or being good or beneficial that could be considered to be like something that degenerates the culture. Like if people are all into this thing that makes them just kind of sink into this level where they just appreciate despair and death and hatred. But on the other hand, like we have less violence and crime in society, that obviously has to be a good thing. Because I guess it does seem that like more violence might happen in societies where things are more censored. Like, I mean, Hitler was just against what he considered to be degenerate art, which
Yeah.
was something that was just creative art. It wasn't nothing degenerate about it. But
And I mean, if you watched Pink Flamingo or Pink Flamingos,
I haven't. Pink
if you
Flamingos.
did, right,
Mhm.
let's say that's degenerate art, right?
Right.
It's
Oh
not
yeah.
like you're not suddenly a devotee of degenerate art. In other words, you can consume a whole spectrum of things. You can watch the
Mhm.
most hopeful. You can watch Whisper of the Heart, the very hopeful Hayao Miyazaki
Right.
movie, and feel very
Mhm.
warmed by it. And then the next day you watch Pink Flamingos, and each thing that you consume gives you it gives you a spectrum of new things to think about, and it maybe doesn't
Yeah, I mean,
necessarily
yeah.
make you a whole person, but it gives you a new perspective. So someone doing that or making that type of movie doesn't mean suddenly everybody is who likes that movie or who has watched that movie becomes
That's true.
sort of this devotee of that movie, right? I can see
Right.
a lot of bad
And we're
stuff.
probably going to be, I mean, if anybody that even knows that movie sees this, they probably make fun of us because I doubt it's even as sinister as what we're thinking. But I mean,
Listen,
the
Gabe,
fact that actual
Gabe,
chickens were
if
killed
there
is
are
bad.
chickens killed, I'm against it,
Yeah.
and I think it's bad.
The funny thing, I always wanted to put at the end of like, well, if I end up being a filmmaker at some point, you know how they have at the end, PETA approves or whatever of this movie, or no animals were harmed in the making of this film.
Yeah.
I want to say that, except for all the animals that were eaten by the cast and crew. Because I mean, catering, they're
Fair.
all going to be eating animals that were killed.
Very good point.
But there's just something, I guess, a little sick about it that you're killing this animal for entertainment value and not for sustenance.
Yeah.
Because there was a thing that was a controversy with Apocalypse Now. Are you familiar with the end of that?
The cow, right?
Killing of the bull.
But they were going to do that
that's-
anyway, though, right?
Exactly. It's a cultural ceremony, and they're eating the cow, and that's how they kill it.
Right.
And it's being killed in probably
They
a more
weren't killing
humane
it
way
for
than
the
most
movie.
cows are.
Instead,
No. They
Instead,
filmed the cultural
Ted
event.
Koppel, the director, Ted Koppel, decided to he decided to find a place where it was happening anyway. That's responsible directing. Like there are tons of cultures that kill cows, right, for different reasons, or kill animals for different reasons. That's going to happen.
Especially India.
You're not gonna stop it. Yeah, especially right in the center of Hindu India is where you find the most. But when you do find it, then if you can use that to your advantage, no harm done. But as soon as you
Because it's real. Like,
say
it's real
we're
life.
only
This
doing
happens.
this
Yeah.
for entertainment value, then it's different. We're strangling these
I agree.
chickens. We're gonna, after we strangle them, we're gonna just toss them into a dumpster.
Well,
that
I
makes me
think they
sad.
did say after the fact that they ate them, but I don't think that
No, it still
makes
somehow
it okay
doesn't
to
seem
torture.
right.
You don't have to torture them to death. That is different.
Exactly. I think we're on the same page here.
We are.
If-
Next topic. What's next?
Yeah. So I wanted to get into. I guess I wanted to start with where you go for. If we're going to talk about politics, where you go for analysis, how do you outsource analysis? Because you can't read every news story and think about everything yourself. So, what are your
I guess
what are your
yeah, you
primary
have to-
sources?
I think everything now you have to it's pointillistic or something. You have to do a combination of things and form an opinion on those.
But
so
you can't
maybe,
do primary source yourself because that would be too time consuming. Yeah.
well.
If it's
Yeah,
no,
I
it's
mean,
not even primary
sources
source.
are so rare. Yeah.
No, it's not primary source. YouTubers look at secondary source or look at journalism. They're commenting on just commentary of journalism of real events. So it's third tier actually.
Like certain things in the news are so far away, and they're going to be distorted necessarily on so many levels. I just refuse to form an opinion on them. I guess I have an inkling of what I would assume is going on, but like say Venezuela, that is so politically complex, and there are so many factors at play that I have no idea what's going on there, and I don't think I will know for 30 years until it's declassified.
Yeah, we'll look back on it.
But the one thing I do know
Let's cut
is that
here.
Venezuela,
Let's cut here
right,
and continue in 30 years.
right. Basically.
Yeah.
But I mean, the news will report something, and it's a good idea to have an opinion on it, and you would like for your favorite political candidates to have an opinion on it.
And
But
you'd
it's
like to
something
think
like
that the
that.
opinion that they do have is right, but then you think, well, but then am I just being blindly?
Basically, at this point, how can you be a responsible citizen even if you want to be
Yeah.
when nobody knows what's going on for many things?
Fair
So, like
point.
Venezuela, the one thing I do know, factually, as far as Wikipedia goes, which I'm assuming is reasonably correct. I mean, it's a scientific fact.
I'm not
that
sure.
Venezuela is number one for oil reserves in the world.
Yeah, and it is a country.
It's a
We've
country,
established
and
two
it's
facts.
number one, like over Saudi Arabia, over Russia.
Heck of a
So
lot
the
of
fact-
oil. It's
So
also
that just tells me it's not just whatever's going on with their presidents and their voting. No way in hell. And if Russia is there, we're there. They have the number one amount of oil in the world.
It's also fairly factual why their economic issue happened, right? Because oil prices dropped worldwide suddenly, and that was their only export, and so
Yeah.
they were sort of left out to dry because they didn't have anything to fall
I
back
can't even
on.
leap
right?
that far. I'm not sure what it implies. All I know is there's something fishy going on that I don't know anything about.
So you're
But
saying
it's fishy.
oil prices globally were manipulated so that Venezuela would collapse? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying anything except that Venezuela.
That's a responsible position to take.
Yeah.
So, but then how?
it's sad.
Yeah, it is
Sad.
It's sad, but it's responsible to say I just don't know. I just don't know.
All I know is something is afoot down there that's not on the up and up. I mean, you can't say anything else.
Yeah. Well, you can say you can say that people are struggling and the government is in chaos.
No, Not really, because that implies like a sympathy towards something that you also don't. Yeah, okay, you could say that.
You could say that there's turmoil down there,
It is
largely due to
you
economic
should be able to
factors.
say that.
There
But the
are
fact is that people
economic
politicize that. They'll
problems.
say, "Oh, so you're one of the people that thinks that, huh?"
Yeah, that's true.
Because that's how they spin
I
that.
can
They'll
say that
there's
there
all these-
are economic troubles there, though, and their currency has been destroyed.
That's what the CIA wants you to say. I mean, we got to go down there and we got to save those people.
We gotta go down there with a bunch of money and trade them for chickens and strangle the chickens.
We got to save them.
Gotta save
America.
Yeah,
There's only one country for the task.
gotta get in a time machine. We gotta go back to when they were filming Angry Flamingos, and we gotta save those pigeons that they were strangling when they were filming the movie. And after we do that,
You
then
gotta
we
kill a bunch of chickens. Why don't you send them down to Venezuela?
Yeah.
John Waters.
Yeah, John Waters. Why don't you use ducks instead? Because they deserve to die.
Yeah, ducks are notoriously violent
Yeah.
in their sexual activities. It seems related.
There are no good ducks.
No.
Yeah. How do you feel about pigeons?
I like
Pre
animals.
and post New York.
I like animals.
Yeah. Except for ducks.
I rescued a pigeon in New York. So
Yeah, you took it. Yeah, that's right. You rescued
Took it to
pigeon.
the
You
Wild
took it
Bird
to the
Fund.
Wild Bird Fund.
which
Lily.
I actually later Lorena and I were walking along and we found a mouse that looked like he was drunk. I think he was just really cold. But we took him to the Wild Bird Fund and they took care of him too.
So they take mice.
I'm hoping that they didn't like just feed him
Probably
to a hawk or something. But
Thank you. Thank you
Very
for your
naive about
kind
that, but yeah.
donation.
This mouse is struggling.
Fabrico will enjoy this very much.
Fabrico. Good name for a hawk.
Fabrico. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Well, what your original thing a long time
Yep.
ago was about how you form a political opinion. There's certain people I watch, like I'll watch.
I'm glad you mentioned the Venezuela point is good to note though, because it does give you sort of contextualizes
That's like
your...
a one that's probably the most impossible one to know. That and certain other foreign policy things. Their domestic things are easier because you're living in it, so you can have a solid opinion about that.
Yeah, but it's still good to always allow for the possibility that you thought you knew what was going on and you really don't.
Yeah, right. Which
Yeah.
I mean, we learned so many times, especially with foreign policy things,
It's
like
very
Middle
it's
East.
a very
but-
healthy attitude, I
Mhm.
think, to be uncertain.
So yeah, I watched a little
Socratic
Kyle,
uncertainty.
Kyle Kalinske.
Kyle
a little,
Kalinski's, yeah.
little Jimmy Dore. A little who's that? Tim Pool. Though Tim Pool, I thought was cool, but he's obviously just like he's just trying to trend these right wing stories. Have you follow Tim Pool?
No. I saw the Joe Rogan podcast of him with the
Yeah,
Twitter
Jack Twitter
Dorsey.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's good, but he's entirely one-sided. He says he's a liberal, but every story he presents is always a topic of the day politically that shows how stupid what the left is doing, and all
more of
his
a Dave
audience
Rubin
is
liberal.
right. He's a lot smarter than Dave Rubin.
Oh yeah, I think everyone's smarter than Dave Rubin.
But he's kind of cashing in on the same audience, and he's obviously going for viewers numbers rather than following just plain news stories. So that's kind of disappointing. Yeah, just people like that, and then looking at the mainstream version of the story and kind of playing them off each other based on what I know about the world already.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, not too different from that. I try to make sure I get some mainstream, so I'll watch CNN on YouTube, MSNBC on YouTube sometimes, Fox News on YouTube as well. I'm subscribed to all three of them, but I also watch not Tim Pool, but I watch Kyle Kalinske, Secular Talk. Sometimes if I can stand the personalities, I'll watch the Young Turks. It's hard for me.
I don't watch them at all anymore.
This is a weird thing for me because most of the things that Cenk Uygur says, I agree with completely. But
of course.
I still find him so intolerable and annoying as a human being, as a person.
Of course.
It's and everyone on the show pretty much. I don't like anybody. I don't like any of them, but I agree with them almost 100% on most things. Not everything, but in many cases. The same with Kyle. I think Kyle is very intelligent. I think he's pretty thoughtful in his analysis. I agree with most of the things that he says, but I really find him annoying, especially when he
goes into
attempts
his
to be
goofy
funny.
voice.
When he tries to be funny, it's so awkward.
He does
and
a really
painful.
He's doing it a lot lately because people encourage him a lot.
It's
When
painfully
he goes
awkward.
into his voice, it's
Yeah.
and his
My
set's
goal
bad.
would be if he could see this, if I've just posted this as a clip and he sees this, is so painful and awkward. I hope he just
I'm
sticks
gonna go
to
ahead
straight
sitting here
analysis.
with this lighting and tell him his set's bad.
Yeah, bad set, and
It's just something about it.
Some
I guess
people-
it's good for a radio show, but it's he's doing a video, obviously.
some people
He just has he's got bad aesthetic taste. I said it.
bad microphone setup, bad set, and fundamentally
I think he uses a
fundamentally
tube mic.
unfunny as a human being.
I don't like it doesn't make me cringe or anything when he does that voice, except that
I
sometimes
cringe.
I just feel like you're going on too long, man. Stop it with your goofy voice. Like
Yeah.
I get the idea that you like yourself and doing that voice, but stop.
I know, because his points are all very good. I mean, he's smart. He's a very smart
Yeah.
person. He's thoughtful. He's intelligent.
He's just getting a little high on his own power, I guess. That happens with everybody.
Sniffing
Once
his
you're
own
you're
sniffing
successful,
his own farts.
yeah,
little
he's
too
got a
much.
fart tube going right into his nostril.
his
and
nostrils. That microphone that comes in from the side, that's just his farts coming into his nose.
Mhm. We joke about that a lot on the movie I'm working on with chemical suits because
Who's
due
we?
to my cousins Ben and Noah
Yeah.
and myself, and recently actually Sam Kennard helped us yesterday.
Okay.
Anyway, the chemical suits, they have a tube that goes into the back of them, and that goes nowhere. So basically, it's just like a tube that would go to where your farts are coming from, and it goes right to the mask.
Really?
Yeah. Anyway, that's a small
funny.
side topic, but yeah, I think there's some certain people that are completely intolerable to me that I can't watch. Sam Cedar would be one.
Yeah, I can't. I struggle.
He first of all, he's dull, but he always is
dull.
like that corporatist mainstream line that
Yeah.
I just can't hack. And then
Can't
the
hack
other
it. I
guy,
agree.
yeah, there's one more who's right in the same tier
See
of
the guy
people.
he's
The
guy
left-wing
who talks
guy
like
who
this,
just-
and he's got a beard, and he loses his voice sometimes, and he
No, it's a different guy.
put on a lot of weight recently.
This guy is more of a.
Can't remember that guy's name. Let's just trash.
I'll think of this
trash
guy.
people. Trash
Yeah,
people
it's
we
trash.
we agree with.
We were talking about this yesterday too, and we're falling into the same thing right here, right now. But it seems like all of YouTube is content about content about content. It's
Yeah.
all completely.
Yeah, that's what.
There's no new content,
hmm
and now
And the-
we're feeding into that by talking about it.
At least
So
we're
I
not
wanted to
we're
start-
not showing clips though. We are not showing clips, and we were talking about other things earlier, so that
Would it be cool if we started a review channel though, like where we did this, like a Skype channel, but if you could have videos and then we commented on them, and then we could review our own reviews and review those reviews and on and on and on until like it just turns into
that's a-
pixelation.
that's a very interesting idea.
It's called review, or
Has anyone
something
ever
like
done
that.
that before? I like that.
I mean,
idea.
people are doing it all the time. That's what
I
YouTube
know, but
is.
you're suggesting taking it to the nth degree.
Yeah.
I think
And it
that's
never stopped.
a great
Yeah.
idea.
Well, we'd start just by reviewing reviewers reviewing things.
And then we would review our previous video about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
It might just be a series of reviews about the review that continues in infinity. Like we only review.
would be like
our
pointing your
review.
pointing your camera
Yeah,
at your computer.
or-
yeah.
yeah.
Or
You have
your
two
webcam.
oppositely facing mirrors.
Yeah. Yeah. But then that would be the ultimate waste of time, but it doesn't exist. So that's like a postmodern sort of thing, which is the only reason I don't like it.
You're against postmodernism now?
I've always been against postmodernism.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's get back to politics. We can get back into philosophy again, but we're not done with politics.
Is there a
yet.
tie-in with postmodernism?
I mean, I guess it's a lot of what's wrong with everything right now.
The thought process.
One thing I do agree with Tim Pool, he's usually referencing things that are like a sign that we live in some kind of it's hard to feel good about anything when you go through YouTube these days. There's not much, and usually when I feel happy about seeing something, it's usually some sort of critical thing that I hope that I would get to watch. It's it's a negative instinct.
There's one channel that I follow that is full of hope, and it's perfectly balanced, and there's nothing negative about it, and it's completely original.
What is it?
It's do you know? Did you ever see the Marble Machine video of that guy from Sweden, from a band called, I think it's called Wintergarden or Vintergarden? So there's this, I believe it's a Swedish band, maybe from Sweden, I think.
Possible?
Yeah, maybe Sweden, or I can't remember if it's Sweden or Norway. Anyway, maybe he's Norwegian or Swedish, I can't remember. But
band.
It's a band, and they made this video. I'll send you a link after, where he built this crazy marble machine that plays music, but it's really,
I've seen
really
that.
good
Yeah.
music. Okay, you have seen that. Well, that machine was only for that video, and it barely held together for that video. It was made out of plywood and plastic, and it just collapsed right after. It was a crap machine.
Wow.
He has, since that video, for the last 3 years, been building what's called the Marble Machine X. And he's been AutoCADing and getting parts from people around the world. And every week he just talks about his progress. And he's just making it, but he's going to make it this time so that he can tour around the world with this machine, because it's now going to be stable, made of metal, and really, really strong. And it's just each week, it's just him and his progress toward this single goal of being able to tour with this marble machine that he is making by himself, with his own music that he is writing, with parts that are being sent to him, that have been CAD'd and molded from metal. It's very original. It's very hopeful, and it's very. It makes me feel positive. I feel good after I watch those videos. I look forward to them every Wednesday. It's the most positive part of my YouTube diet.
That's nice.
Didn't find anything negative. I'll send it to you.
Well,
after.
no, I feel negatively about that. That makes me sad. I mean, no, it's good. I'm glad you like it, but I just hate when people devote so much time and effort into something so pointless.
I don't think. Why is it pointless? Building.
I mean, it's not pointless, but it's limited and
why is it
trivial.
Why is
it's
it
trivial.
limited? Why is that limited?
Well, it's not going to be president. It's not going to.
Well, but it might tour the world and be the centerpiece of
maybe it will be president.
No, but why is that? But why is that any more limited than being a film director who makes movies that make people happy for 2 weeks?
Well, it's like a no. It's like being a circus or something. You can travel along and be like a circus performer with an elephant, and that's nice, but it's not going to affect anybody's life more than 5 minutes. And then they'll think about how much they enjoyed the 5 minutes, but that'll be it. It'll be like you might as well make colored spinning wheels that distract people, or
I completely disagree, 100%, because it's I think that there's a need for a feeling of, how in childhood there's a feeling of magic and wonder about
I already
everything.
mentioned the circus, yes.
Yeah, okay, but so that's a real and necessary feeling. If we were talking about the diet, the psychological diet before, right?
I don't think
if there's part of it has to be fulfilled with a sense of there being something outside of, and Jung talks about this too, something outside of the ordinary, some higher thing. I
believe his machine is about 150 years late. So that's when it would be really awesome.
No, but it's not just the machine; it's the creation of the machine.
No, the only thing that matters is the art, not the doing of it. I mean, it is for content. Yes, it's interesting to watch him making it, but the end product and what's touring is what really matters, and its effect on the world will be a trivial matter.
So, did you gain anything from watching the behind the scenes of the Lord of the Rings? Would you say those shouldn't exist because that's the making of the films?
No, but I mean those films have actual value, like in themselves.
Yes, but the making of don't watch the behind the scenes. Those great behind the scenes documentaries.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, if he was touring, okay, so the value to you is great.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I'm just
Yeah, it
saying.
gives me a sense of magic that there's a person
All
who's
right.
creating
I'm
a
sorry. I don't
crazy
mean to hate
machine.
on the thing that you like. I'm
But
just
I'm just.
talking.
Hmm.
Doesn't make me feel better about YouTube. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
It doesn't make me. Oh, okay. Now that I know there's a guy making a machine like this out there.
Well, I wouldn't expect it to
That's-
because you haven't seen it. I'll send it to you.
Well, okay. Point made. Yeah, I can watch it.
Well, and in a way, I mean, you're doing exactly the same thing, right? You
No.
are. You're making a movie. Why are you making a movie?
I'm making a movie in a format that nobody else has used before.
Yeah, but
It's
who-
going to change
who-
the game, bro.
Who cares?
I'm part of the evolution.
I'm making
not
a
back in
machine. I'm
1800.
making a machine that makes electronic music, including arpeggios and kick drums. And
Is it a mechanical device or is it?
yeah, it's a
AI driven?
mechanical device that creates electronic music, and it's insane.
Nice.
It's awesome.
Sounds interesting.
It's dope.
I'm just saying, if it's not changing the nature of what's possible in reality, or
I would say that it
imaginations
is.
about what's. Why do you love this device so much? I'm gonna have to. You're really selling me on watching these behind the scene videos because it sounds
because
like
so it's sort of like the idea of creating great music instead of doing it all and editing it together to build something that drops marbles that just by turning a crank and by
it
turning
sounds like an exercise in pointlessness
by
to me.
turning that crank you get amazing electronic dance music from this giant wooden machine.
Wow.
And you can't argue that music is not important because music is
I mean,
fundamental
maybe that'll be the first. I don't know.
Do you think music is not important, Gabe?
Music that comes from a crank is not more important.
But music is important to
Yes.
human existence, right? Music
Yes,
is an
but that music could come from an iPad and it would have the same quality.
But
That's
if
what
you
I'm
went
saying.
to a live show and saw
There's a-
someone produce that iPad music with a giant
Okay.
wooden machine and a crank,
Yeah,
that would
that'd
be a
be pretty
different
cool.
visual experience.
It would be as cool as an elephant was. I just watched a show about a circus. That's why I'm quoting this so much.
You're
Here's a good example of what I think that is. There's a movie called Waiting for Hockney, I think. It's a play on Waiting for Godot, the play.
yeah.
I think that's what it's called, but it's about a guy that was into super realistic portraits, and he was going to make the most realistic portrait of Marilyn Monroe ever. And he spent years, I don't know if it was 5 or 10 or something, but they document the whole process of him making this. And his one goal is to impress his favorite artist, which is English painter David Hockney. I believe that's his name.
Okay. David
And so
Hockey
at the
sticks.
end,
Yeah.
spoiler alert, he
Spoiler
shows the
alert.
painting to his favorite artist, and the guy's like appreciative of it. Yeah, it's pretty good. But then behind the camera, you hear him saying, "Ah, it's just another fucking picture." Or, no, what he says, because the whole point of this guy was to make a photorealistic pencil drawing, I believe. And so when David Hockney saw it, he said, "Oh, it's just that fucking photo again," because that's all he did.
Yeah.
He humanly recreated a photo, and it had no artistic value.
Right.
All he did was struggle, which was, the only art that was created was the documentary
Right.
about him making
Well-
what he thought was going to be art.
The idea the idea of him doing that, creating a photorealistic picture with pencils, might inspire some young turkeys to go out there and
It turns out there. Yeah.
do something. I don't know. You never know where things
For
are
me,
going
it
to
was
come from.
it was a warning.
Yeah. So there's value in that.
Yeah, but it wasn't the value that he was going for.
I would say elephant plus good electronic music plus Lord of the Rings behind the scenes documentary plus the magic of watching an epic 3-year-long struggle to create something equals watchable and worthy of a subscribe.
Yes. You ever watch those videos of elephants painting paintings?
No, because
And
it's
you see all the
It's cruel.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
one time I watched a.
Capable of Googling, you can find that out. But most people on Facebook are like, "Oh my God, animals! You know, what can't they do?"
That it kills Mushroom. She cries every time she sees anything about elephants. She just starts crying.
Yeah.
Yeah. She gets really angry.
Wouldn't like that circus documentary I just watched.
She gets really upset and cries.
Yeah, they're
one
beautiful
time
creatures.
I just said elephant to her and she started crying.
Is she still vegetarian?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So it was still that movie that did it?
Pescatarian. Yeah, that movie. Yeah. Have you seen it?
I recommended it to you guys.
Oh,
like
yeah?
3 times before you watched it.
Was
That's
that you?
why you watched it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Boy, it's taken me a long time to get back into meat after that. I finally recovered.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Good.
it wore off after a while. I'm eating meat again without difficulty.
Elephant meat.
Yeah. I eat only strangled chickens.
The director of that movie just won the Palme d'Or or whatever for Paris.
Hold on. What's that movie called? Okja. Yeah.
I was trying to remember myself.
Yeah.
I think it's the same director, but he just won the Palme d'Or for his new movie called Parasite, I think.
Wow.
He's Korean, right?
Yeah. He's an amazing filmmaker because he's so original. Snowpiercer is a little too weird for me. I don't want to watch it again. But Okja has the sort of balance of it being a really good, nice story. So he's got a very his style of filmmaking is so weird that it risks being too weird and not.
I would say not a
very
would
good
prefer
story.
watching Snowpiercer over Okja again because it's. Like the criticism you could make towards Snowpiercer would be that it's a little too on the nose, maybe politically, like class systems playing out across the expanse of this train.
Sometimes that's a good thing to just simplify that part of it.
Well, I'm saying if you're on that same side politically and you don't even mind it, then watch it again. But the only Okja was it's kind of like not very feel good. It's just kind of it's harrowing.
No, I think it's a feel good movie. The end is not very feel good. But Snowpiercer is not feel good at all. Snowpiercer is uncomfortably weird. I think it's just too strange.
I'll have to watch it again and see because I've only seen either of them. I mean, once a piece. So
I saw Okja twice. I saw Snowpiercer once. Yeah,
you're
good
living.
Filmmaker.
You're walking the walk on your opinion.
Yeah, living the dream. Starting a new YouTube channel called. This is my opinion about how many times I saw.
I'm starting a new YouTube channel called Critiquing Your Dream. Critiquing Luke's Dream.
My channel is called Critiquing the Number of Times I Decide Not to Watch Movies.
That would be interesting. Do like 2 companion YouTube channels, and one person makes only original content, and the other one criticizes only that content.
We've got 2 good ideas for channels, Gabe. First
Would
channel.
Would that be cool? One guy, he's all original, but he's pathetic, and it's always really lame. It could be one time a week we create these things. An original video comes out that this guy made, who's a pathetic idiot, and then the other channel produces a video that just rips it to shreds. And they only exist in their own world. There's no other factors.
And people will wonder, why is this guy critiquing at first? Why is this guy critiquing videos that are getting 7 views? Why? Because usually you want to attack the big fish, because if you attack the big fish, then you're going to bring more views to yourself, right? If you're critiquing the things that other people are watching. But if you're critiquing someone who has no views, it's sort of like...
The critic guy could hire a bunch of bot accounts to like the guy's other channel, and the other guy could feel very happy about all the new subscribers he has, and not knowing that they're all hate accounts.
I like this idea very much.
It kind of sounds like a film.
We should discuss it more seriously later because that's interesting.
This is copyright trademarked.
Yeah,
copyrighted.
Is a watermark here.
People like to hate on the beard, though. I walked into a family gathering recently, and Marge looked over and said, they say there's more bugs in people with beards that have beards than there are on dogs, or something like that.
No, you could say to that, just say Moses had a beard. You like Moses?
And he was an asshole, huh?
He was an asshole. He started everything. What do you think about that? Jesus had a beard.
I'm not
Your
quick
own
on
Lord and Savior had a beard. He was not clean.
Could be some questions about that, I guess.
Could say I might have a beard, but I also am like Jesus in that way.
I guess if I was truly to say something like, I would just say like, well, I might have bugs in my beard, but I'm not an asshole. But I can't say something like that at my family gathering.
Right, yes. You can say, no, the clean line is, well, at least I'm not an asshole. That's the clean line there. That's the straight line.
Well, I feel bad because she's actually very nice. Sometimes she just says things that are not very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had that happen to me before. Things said something that just wounded me to the core. And
you're gonna have to bleep out the family member I was talking about.
Yeah, this is not on the record. This is off the record.
Well, then what are we filming for? I'm in it for I told you, the art is what counts. It's the end product, not the doing of it. It's what ends up happening, right?
It's the final result.
Yeah.
So then you're not allowed to watch behind-the-scenes documentaries anymore. You're not allowed to do that.
I don't want to. You were going to say something interesting or important before? Or should we move on to this new topic?
I was going to get to. I wanted to get into because I went to you and I have both been to an Andrew Yang event, so I wanted to get into.
Oh yeah.
Yang. But
that's completely different. Let's go with the art thing first, then real quick.
Okay.
Josh Reisner gave me a book about.
Josh Reisner is your friend.
Josh Reisner is my friend who is a painter, artist guy, and he gave me a book about. The concept of the book was to inspire people to get excited about working on their art and not concentrate so much on the end result, because a lot of people get bogged down when they only have their eyes on what they want to do. They don't end up actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget what it was called, but that was the concept of the book, that it was more important to get into the work, the loving of the doing, and not the idea of what the doing ends up being. But I say the whole point of doing art is the end.
Depends on what the project is. If the project is the doing and that's the reason you do it.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's the end then.
Well, so Buddhists do that. They do these sand tap artworks, but the whole purpose of doing it is to as soon as they finish, they destroy it.
Yeah.
The whole purpose of it is
a
teaching lesson. Yeah. They're teaching themselves that they have to live in the moment. So that has value, right? That's maybe spiritual value.
I'm not saying it doesn't have value. I guess I'm talking about art.
Yeah. You just have to clarify what the projects are, right? So
I think that's the whole problem with humans in general. Our problem with finding absolute truth is more in our inability to phrase the question correctly.
I think so. And so for example, I think postmodernism is a perfect example of this. I think postmodern art is great, but it's not art. Postmodernism is a project of deconstructing what people think about what art is. It's more of a what can we do that people haven't done before that's weird? That in itself could be a project. Like people haven't thought about this idea. So I've cut a dolphin into nine pieces, and I've maybe. Why do we have to call it a specific thing? But that the way of thinking about something new and making people think differently about their definition of art is an interesting project. But then saying that it is art in the way that many people think of art then is maybe not achieving that. If that makes sense.
Like postmodernism it's a useful deconstruction of what might be wrong with your art too. Like anarchy is helpful to artistic scenes just as much as a forest fire might be helpful to a natural ecosystem. You need to burn things down and realize this is actually bullshit. The emperor has no clothes.
Yeah,
that's kind of what postmodernism is in a lot of ways, philosophically, artistically.
Right. So it's a good project, but it's the fire. Right. It's the fire.
Which is another one of Jordan Peterson's huge crutches, is that he has such a high regard for everything Western that he doesn't see any flaws in it.
But it's like. Yeah. So as you said, it's about the question you ask. If you ask the question, what do I consider to be art? Maybe art is something that is beautiful, that pleases me. It's an end result, an end creation that someone went through a painstaking process, or however it was made. It pleases me. It's beautiful. I enjoy it.
Is that
whether
not the
it's a
problem of
movie.
humanity, of us all arguing with each other without agreeing to terms?
Yes, agreeing to terms. Let's have because we have words that are attached to things, and then
Right.
we
So
all
it's almost like
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Your
I don't
understanding of
understand
this word
and
is
you don't
here,
understand this, but we
Right.
both hate each other for it.
but we're
and
using
we
this
hate...
word to say it. We're using
it's like-
this word to talk about it, but your understanding is here and my understanding is here.
Or yeah, atheists and Christians, and neither of us can actually summarize what we mean by God, I guess, right? We
Right.
say God, but nobody has actually pointed out what they actually mean by the word God before they start talking about it.
Right.
Or say like in the media now talking about certain political things, it doesn't.
Man,
Nobody ever agrees to terms.
That's what I want to get to, because I think the socialism thing is suffers from that in a
Yes.
really big way. The thing that really frustrates me is that when people say socialism, they say, yeah, well, what about Venezuela? Yeah, well, what about public schools?
Right.
That's socialist. What, call it whatever you want. You're just talking
you
about
wanna
how
live
you're
in like right.
let's rephrase it. Let's say discretionary spending. How about that? Is that okay?
Oh, you don't like socialism, but you want the country to grow. Well, maybe you'd like to be like socialist economic, like China, which is growing 10 times faster than America,
Right.
and it's got a socialist economy because the government controls everything, like all means of production.
No, they don't.
Oh, well, I mean, most of they
No.
control basically. No,
China is a capitalist country.
no.
Yes.
Capitalist.
Yes. That's we got to have that discussion eventually. I have very strong opinions
Well,
about
I mean,
China.
I don't have a dog in the fight. I thought that it was a socialist country as far as the government controls what's going on.
It's not a controlled economy.
Seriously?
There are certain things that are controlled, like the currency, but in the same way that it's controlled in the U.S., there are certain things that are tamped down. But no, it's not a socialist country. It's really not. We should definitely have a discussion about it because it's pretty interesting. It's pretty complex. But
Okay. Well,
yeah.
I mean, I know nothing about it, so I wouldn't be a good person to have a discussion with because I thought that they did. I thought it was actually a good argument for socialism that China is growing at the rate that it is, and the government is in control. I mean, the government decides the way, whereas in the United States, the corporations decide the way.
Well, that's more true, I think. Corporations do decide to an extent, but there are different types of corporations. And yeah, we can talk about that another time, I think. But yeah, that's an interesting conversation. But no, what I was going to say is
my whole point. Yeah,
the socialism thing.
you have some editing to do.
I don't think so. The socialism point, the word socialism is scary to people. But if it were just called changes in the discretionary spending of the government and spending less on guns and more on healthcare, if that was the small paragraph instead of socialism, then people would be probably more
that's
okay
what's
with
brilliant about Andrew Yang's freedom dividend versus welfare handout check.
He understands
Right.
that people have baggage around certain words, and when people hear certain words, their ears prick up, and then the discussion is over because people can't get past the binary yes or no of bad, good, can't accept socialist or only this or only that. So that's I think pretty genius. That's why he's got away from UBI too, even though UBI is not even that.
The only issue that I wonder about working is, I mean, it's absolutely right to like mention the military, the fire department, public education, everything. But the only problem with that is that a lot of those things do suck. The military is not. The military is the good one. We have an excellent military for what they do. It doesn't matter whether our wars are good or not. They're good at what they do. But the post office kind of sucks. Public education is trash.
A lot of bloat.
The fire department is good.
Yeah.
But it's
roads
still,
are
it's
good.
not like it's a home run.
Not a home
run. Roads are iffy.
Yeah.
Depends on your state.
Yeah. Well, I think you'd have to look at how good is Medicare, because Medicare is already a government-run healthcare program. Medicare is already there, so you'd have to say, does Medicare work or not?
Medicare for all is there?
Yeah, Medicare is a thing that exists, right? It's just that you have to be. I think it's over 65.
Actually, I know nothing about like public health. So what is Medicare besides the Obamacare mandate that you have to be covered?
Medicare is already a thing. It's just for people over age 65,
Right,
I
okay.
think. It's already there.
I'm an idiot.
You pay when you pay taxes.
How does it work for them?
So when you pay taxes, your whole life you pay into Social Security
I
and
understand
Medicare.
that, yes.
You read that; it says it on there. You're paying into something.
I've never
a
read it,
program.
but yes.
You pay into that. It's a program you're paying into, and it has a budget, and it's basically publicly funded health. It's a
See,
publicly funded
I have an
healthcare
idiot
system.
brain that's always anytime I hear the word Medicare, I assume they're talking about medical care.
Yeah, it's actually a specific program.
Okay.
I don't know every detail about it either, but basically you have to hit a certain age and then you get access to it, basically.
Because obviously what we don't have that like Obama instituted was just basically a law that forces people to have health insurance that kind of sucks because it's still corporately controlled Medicare that's way overblown in the price and the cost.
It's not Medicare. You just have to have insurance or you
I know.
pay a
I'm just saying
penalty.
medical coverage.
Yeah. So Medicare is actually a specific program. It's
Right.
got a name. It is a government-run program. It is the post office of healthcare for the government.
Yeah,
already,
I know. Yeah,
right?
I feel bad that you're continuing to explain that because I'm sure everybody knows that, and
So then
only I
it would. I think
equated that word with something else. That it
Bernie's plan and Andrew Yang's idea, and those who support that particular plan, is to just drop the age down to 0. That's it. Same program, just drop the age to 0. Instead of you don't have to wait 65 years. It starts at
What are the
birth.
cost effectives on that? Like, what does it look like for?
So the benefit of the government being part of the government is that you go to regular hospitals instead. Though the government is able to apparently negotiate prices better because they're the government and they have more bargaining power, whereas single individuals don't have any bargaining power to tell companies to lower drug prices by or limit drug prices and not jack them up hundreds of dollars overnight. But the government has that bargaining power to be able to force drug companies to keep their prices at a stable, normal amount, basically.
I wonder how many other things there are just in the medical system right now that you wouldn't be able to fix with that. Like, I think if you get life flighted, if you get in a crash or something and you're life flighted, you're on the books for like $30,000 or something.
Yeah. Well, even if you get in an ambulance, you're on the books for $1,500 in New York.
Yeah, and that's nothing you had anything to do with. It wasn't your choice, but you're just you're sentenced.
Sell your
basically
house now.
Oh,
dare you.
you own a house? I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
No homeowners are getting run over. Come on. That's what houses are for. They're car blockers.
But people from other countries come over here and they're kind of shocked that it is that way. That basically people are punished for having health issues.
As far as like politics, healthcare is the thing I know the very least amount about.
But it's the most important. It's the most important issue. I'm not saying I'm not an expert either.
Yeah.
But it is the most important because
I'm not sure it's the most important. I think
it's the most important.
No, I think anything that the economy itself is the most important. I guess is for the electorate. Maybe it is the most important. It's right up there with the economy, though, as far as people making money and how they're making money. It's 50-50, I think, between those two things.
It just seems like when you do have to sell your house because you have a child with cancer or you get hit by a car and you have to be life flighted or something happens and you weren't insured and then you get a $60,000 bill or you spend the night at a hospital and get an appendectomy and then you have to pay $60,000. It just it's wrong and weird. It shouldn't happen. It's something wrong with it. It's the fundamental divide is some people think healthcare is a product and some people think it is not.
Doesn't that just go to like the whole values of the country though? I mean, that's about corporatism, pure and simple.
Values, yeah. But the values of the country decide what it is though. It's a definition, right? So roads are by definition not a product. It's not a product. Mm-hmm. It's just something that is a basic thing.
It's for the public
infrastructure,
public work.
It's infrastructure. Yeah. So is healthcare? Should it be infrastructure or should it be a product?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Libraries, infrastructure. Schools.
There's all kinds of like little details that need to be nailed down, but besides that, it's how you categorize the thing. Yeah. And we both agree. I mean, I agree without even understanding. I agree that it shouldn't be what it is now because obviously for-profit medical care is not something that's morally acceptable even. It's not something we should be doing.
I think the interesting thing that Andrew Yang talks about that, for example, Bernie doesn't talk about, because they're on the same page with Medicare for All. I think they both think that that's the best solution, and makes sense to me. I probably don't know it as well as they do either. But Bernie tends to focus on individuals, people who would be able to have medical coverage, and Andrew Yang focuses more on business owners, because also that's a big burden, because if you start a business and you hire people, you have to pay for their health care. So business owners, people who think about starting businesses, they go, but then, God, what about, all of those costs and expenses? When I hire people, I have to pay for their insurance. As soon as there's Medicare for all, then the person who's thinking about starting a business now doesn't have that burden on their shoulders, and maybe more easily able to start a business. So the load is lighter, right?
The combination of the two things, of the universal basic income, even if it was lower, even if it was like $500 a month or something, plus Medicare, I mean, the effect that would have on the economy, I would assume, would be extreme.
Right. The
changes you would see.
Yeah.
And it's something that it's not like a blow that can't be taken by what's going on. I would think that most industrial people or anybody in the tech sector or anything would be for these things.
Right. Because there's so much untapped potential. If you think about how many people could be doing something that makes overall the economy way more productive, aren't doing those things because they're not able to put a toe beyond the line of danger, because they have to first take care of their basic survival. So most people
right now, everybody's got like a boot on their neck.
Yes,
and I've seen that.
People are in
working at my job.
self-preservation mode. People are
working
like
at my
this.
job. I'm a forklift driver working in a factory that sells lawnmowers, and I work with 10 or 15 other guys that have been doing that for a long time, and it's extremely depressing to be around them. They're nice guys. It's not depressing in the camaraderie or whatever, but just seeing how they talk about their own lives and what their plans are. They don't have any plans. It's just survival mode. Yeah. And they're doing a job that back in the 50s or like early 20s or something, back in history would be, I mean, you would be able to do that and buy a house, buy a car, and do anything you wanted.
Yeah.
You're loading trucks for a big company that's sending out all these lawnmowers. It's, a $1 billion company. But they're still scraping by.
Yeah.
It's there's just so little value in what people do now,
and they're and they're constantly on the. I mean, that job is also on the brink of automation, right? I mean,
exactly.
It's going to take one person who's going to come along and make a very smart robot that does forklift.
I mention that to them all the time. I mean, not to like. It's funny, in the break room. There's a video of a machine that picks up the. Because there's in this warehouse, it's next to the factory. Say it's 3/4 of a mile from the factory, and there's a conveyor belt that runs all the way across.
Yeah, I've seen that thing. When you drive past, you see that huge conveyor belt that takes.
So one by one, these lawnmowers being made, by hand by these people in the factory. They're all done, and the little shiny lawnmower comes across the conveyor belt, and there's 2 drops, and these drop down on each side of the warehouse based on where they're going to be stacked.
Yeah.
And so they have this, right now there's 2 workers in forklifts that think I'm, I'm very important. But, I was there and I knew I wasn't important. But so they have a video that plays in the lunchroom, and I have no idea why they play it. I can't believe that they play it. And I always point at it and I'm like, what the hell is that? Is that a threat? Because
why do they play it? I'm guessing it's some
it's an arm. It's a mechanical
that they're gonna build, right?
That picks up the lawnmowers.
They're gonna build it.
Come off the drop. Yeah, and they're gonna install it, and it's gonna stack. And then a guy.
Does the arm also do the middle finger as it moves to the next mower?
Exactly.
Sorry about your jobs.
Why are you showing this?
Man, that's cruel. But are you saying the guys don't get it? They don't get it. They're not. They don't.
It'll never work. It'll never stack. That's what they all say. I talked to our cousin Joe at a family thing, and I talked to him about automated trucks. He's like, they'll never be able to do it. I'm like, they already are doing it.
They're doing it now.
This is not, it's not 10 years away. It's like 5 years away.
Yeah.
And then like
And that
Andrew
arm
Yang,
thing is a lot easier than the truck thing as well. That arm,
yeah, it
and
all
all
you need to do is
forklifts. I
put
mean,
all this shit on tracks, and they're like, well, but sometimes the boxes come down real shitty, and I think, well, that's probably because the box was made by a human. As soon as they get a robot,
yeah,
as soon as there's a robot
I mean,
making
it's
that
funny,
box,
but
there's
it's
not
also
going to be any
sad.
more errors, and everything's going to be very smooth here.
Yeah.
It's going to be a robot-made lawnmower going into a robot-made box. And the thing is, did you know MTD is being bought by Black and Decker?
Oh, really?
Not that anybody knows what MTD is, but it's a
prestigious
$1
lawnmower
billion
company. It's a big
lawnmower
It's a big
company.
company.
Cub Cadet, yeah, it's a lot of lawnmowers, but Black and Decker bought a fifth of the company with the guaranteed option to be able to buy the whole thing, and they're definitely going to buy it.
Yeah.
So as soon as they're going to buy it,
they're going to automate to save cost. Yeah.
well,
I'm not.
if they don't
I'm not laughing
immediately,
because
well,
that's
eventually.
funny. I'm laughing because it's sad that it's coming at
Well, I don't
everyone
care.
like a
I mean,
like an
yeah.
oncoming train. I mean, it really is an oncoming train. And it's already happening. And then as soon as it happens to when I go to a CVS that has self-checkout compared to one that doesn't, I always use self-checkout.
When I go to Walmart, every single time I go to self-checkout,
Most
they have
people,
like
yeah. It's much more efficient.
15 kiosks that you can go to and just
And
do it by yourself.
Now you only need one lady to come along and say, "Do you need any help? Can I see your license if you got beer there?" You know.
Alcohol.
I just need to check
Yes.
your license. Then that's next, and when that happens, then shit's gonna hit the fan in a big way.
And the retail workers. I mean,
Well, that's what I mean. When it happens in retail, that's when shit hits the fan. Seriously.
I'm assuming all your viewers that are be watching this, they know about Andrew Yang and what we're talking about.
I don't know. I don't care. I don't know
Anybody
who the
that's
viewers
going to
are.
click about something about Andrew Yang would know about what we're talking about. But basically, the fact that automation will destroy every job that exists, basically for low-level workers.
Not necessarily even that, because think about a lot of jobs that require that used to be considered high-level jobs, like the entire field of radiology has been vanquished. And radiology used to be something that you had to go to school for many years to learn. Gone, right? Because AI can look at an X-ray and see a cancer or a tumor much more accurately than a human being can. There's no reason to have radiologists anymore.
What's it like? The only things that
And paralegals will be gone because they just research stuff, right? Certain like legal assistants who work in law offices, not the people in the courtroom, but the people who do all of the research. It's a waste of money to pay those people to do that when you can set up an algorithm. And there are already programs that can find exactly what you need with all of the sources.
I guess the whole thing, like that our system has boiled in, or like everything that we've been striving for as human beings has come to this point. Right? We started out in caves with clubs, and we had trouble making fires. I'm just talking about like cartoon level, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's how we started.
Yeah.
So in our greatest dreams, we dreamed of living in a place where we had no need. We had no wants. We did not have to work. We didn't have to wander in out of the cold. All that stuff. And now we're getting there, but it's not actually being gotten to by everyone. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The benefit has only been to a very, very few, and a lot of people,
companies.
I guess you could argue that it isn't, because
But it's not
even people that live in squalor now don't live in squalor like they used to.
Right. You have a lot more comfort even at the lowest level. And I don't like to jump to companies being evil either, because
No, they're not.
Because I don't think that, even though a company's job is to innovate, and so what happens when a company innovates is it gets powerful and it gets huge and it destroys old industries. So I don't think the only thing that Amazon does that's evil, in my opinion, is sell its own products ahead of other people's products. Amazon, those Amazon Basics thing. That's evil. That's about it, though.
there's supposed to be regulatory agencies that keep them in check
It's not
to where
their
they don't
job to do
completely
that.
take over.
Exactly. So it's not their
Yeah.
job to not do that either. It is kind of shady and not good in the long run for them, maybe, but there should be a company
That is why Andrew Yang is the best man and the only man, in my opinion,
Yeah.
or man or woman, that is going to be of any benefit
Yeah.
to society. Being elected, like I would take Andrew Yang or Donald Trump, in that I would like things to either get better or burn, and I don't think Bernie or burn more so they can get better.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at. I don't think Bernie is the answer. I really don't. I used to like him because in that time he made more sense to me, but right now I see him more as like extra politicizing and some stopgap measures, and on the complete wrong side of social justice warrior stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's more troubling to me than he is helpful.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I certainly think
You
he
hear the
doesn't.
thunder?
Yeah. Yeah. It was well timed. You said some ominous things, and then God agreed with
sorry.
you.
Portended to much doom.
Yeah. Yeah. God, every time Gabe says an ominous thing, God builds a bench.
With a little plaque on it that says, Bernie Sanders, rest in peace. 2016 was your year, bro.
Other people blew it. Yeah, so I think, for example, the way that a lot of people like Elizabeth Warren, who I like her energy, or her, not her energy, I like that I like that she yells at bankers. I think that's entertaining. But all of her plans are kind of dumb, I think. Most of them. I think that she focuses too much on the details of the plan without really deeply understanding it. And the whole breakup thing makes no sense to me. She says, we need to break up big tech. We need to break up big tech. Okay,
Yeah.
what are you going to do exactly to Amazon? You're going to break it up so that then Amazon is just shittier? The complex web
Right.
of what makes Amazon so convenient is that it has to work seamlessly. If you break up Amazon, everyone's going to suffer, because then Amazon's going to suck, and there's
They're
nothing
going to
else
be
that's
pissed
even
off at you
close.
because there's a lot of people out there that
I'm
actually
going to be
like their
pissed
Amazon.
off.
Yeah.
Yes. What you should
It's
do.
one-day shipping now.
So it's not like you can just sort of, like, she wants to just go in with a giant a cleaver. She wants to just hack big companies to pieces because they're big. But if you hack Google to pieces because it's big, then you're gonna make Google suck, and then we all have to use Bing, and Bing sucks, and so everything's gonna just suck. So a
That's the
company
thing.
needs to work
Yeah.
efficiently. If you want to be smart about it, then you should say, okay, well, look what Amazon is doing. That particular thing that they're doing is kind of antitrust territory. Let's make sure that they don't sell their own products on their own website. They're not allowed. Okay, that makes sense. I understand that. Smart.
It's like you have a massive churning dam of water coming down. You're like, this is just too powerful. Like, what are we gonna do? Let's just destroy it.
Yeah.
Or you could just funnel some of it off, to where it would be more useful, where there's
smart.
other people thirsty on the side.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still gonna be, everything's gonna be beautiful. Just
Be
take
smart.
the pieces of it that you can. Yes, be smart. Don't destroy it.
Yes.
Which I think that's what's wrong with her, because she's always just like histrionic about banks, because I read something in her history that her father was mistreated by banks and she had this grudge against banks. And I get it. I hate banks. People that run them are probably assholes.
Yes,
But
but
that
why are
doesn't-
banks bad? It's because there are specific things about banks that have been deregulated that should be regulated.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. That doesn't mean you develop a personal grudge and go on an emotional tirade and take your axe out and just smash them. That's not the answer.
It's like if there's a giant grizzly
She's basically
bear.
a comic book villain.
Yeah. It's like if there were a giant grizzly bear and you didn't like that the grizzly bear was big and strong, so you decided
Bisley
to just
Bear, I like
Bisley
that.
Bear. Well, that's his name. His name is Bisley Bear. He's the biggest grizzly bear. And so you
biggest
decided to
business
go
bear.
into the forest and just execute him for being who he is, right? That policy makes no sense. Like, let's figure out how to just make sure that Bisley Bear doesn't get into the schoolyard and eat the children. Let's just make sure we have things in place that protect what needs to be protected. Make sure Amazon is not selling their own products so that their people on the platform don't suffer.
I guess, yeah,
You
we
know,
have to
it's
figure out. I don't think either of us figured
intelligent
out exactly
solutions.
the right metaphor, but
Mine was
it's like
mine
you
was
have
the right one.
okay.
Mine was perfect.
You
Bisley
have to
Bear.
think
Bisley Bear is the perfect
that-
analogy.
That's merch I would buy if you make a Bisley Bear sweatshirt.
You don't like my tape
It's all-
my tape merch
No, I want a Bisley Bear sweatshirt that's all brown with a picture of him.
with a kid halfway into his mouth. Ah.
It says "Keep Bisley Bear out of the playground." Yeah.
Keep Bisley Bear out of the playground. Liz Warren.
Yeah.
Liz Warman.
Liz 2020.
No, that's an Andrew Yang shirt, maybe.
Bisley Bear. He's getting too close. That's the kind of thing she would rail about.
Yeah. I like
bet,
her.
She probably has
I
a
like
little
her
Bisley-
intensity when
got
she's
a little
talking to
Bisley.
bankers.
I bet
though.
she's got some Bisley blood. I bet she's a 20th.
I think she probably needs to sit down with Bisley Bear, smoke a joint, and just cool down for a second.
I think she's a hack and a fraud. And
I like
would never-
when she
I would
talks to
never vote for her.
bankers. I think that's
I
exciting.
don't like her at all
Okay.
because, she's proven herself to be untrustworthy. But basically,
I didn't like when she wouldn't back Bernie Sanders when he needed it.
Yeah,
I didn't like
That's
that.
it. I wrote a whole song about that.
Yeah,
Which I'm
that
very
was-
proud of.
That was scummy. That was stinky. That was a real
She
stinker
didn't.
move.
She didn't back Bernie, and then right after that, she didn't back the Dakota Access Pipeline protesters when they were trying to keep the government out of their Dakota territory.
Liz!
They're
Liz!
and she's a Native American supposedly,
Liz!
and that she presented genetic evidence of it.
I hope she doesn't walk into a forest and accidentally come across Bisley Bear in a bad temper.
He's all about business.
He just smoked his last bag of weed and he's out. And now he's
I don't
pissed.
get why he smokes weed, but I like that it's part of his mythos.
It's growing now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bisley Bear.
He's got a hunger on for toddlers.
Yeah, he should. It's not a good metaphor because he shouldn't eat any of them. Is the
Yeah.
So what we're trying to say is that there's something good about big tech that could be channeled into better resources. So what you were saying is he should just eat part of the children. And
No, I was saying that we should build fences around the school so that Bisley Bear can't get in. And we should take away his laser cutter so he can't cut through the fence. We should give him more powerful weed so that he just feels slow and lazy all the time.
right.
Taint his weed.
No one should have given him that laser cutter. That's where he went wrong.
Well, yeah. I tend to agree. It was this
If he
Amazon
could use it for
Basics
something-
Basics laser cutter.
He could use it for something good. Yeah, it was. If it hadn't been promoted, he never would have had it.
Right. It was at the top of the stack.
He would have some like Chinese knockoff laser and that wouldn't have worked.
Amazon Basics 3 stars, 900 reviews was number 1, laser cutter. Number 2 was 5-star reviews, 10,000 reviewers. Was another
Tanzhou's laser cutter.
Yeah, another laser cutter that wouldn't have cut through the fence.
I just before our podcast, I just finished watching the new Frontline documentary on it's called Trump's Trade War.
Mm-hmm.
About his.
Tell me about that, because I feel confused about the trade war.
I feel more confused after watching it, and that's a little bit where I got the whole socialist company thing from. I just quote whatever I saw in the last 5 minutes. That's my new thing.
Yeah.
Circus documentaries.
Yeah.
But they kind of seem to go at Trump as you would expect any somewhat liberal thing would, as far as him being stupid about starting this trade war.
Yeah.
But then they end up kind of not really proving its necessity, but not really saying it's a bad idea either. It's almost like, just like almost everything in life, at least with these, like the countries that oppose each other, it seems like it's this impossible dichotomy that doesn't have any solving. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is right for people in America, like steel corporations and things, to be upset about China getting all what they have and like things not being fair between how the companies play against each other. But then it does actually hurt international relations when
And
you cut off the Chinese companies.
and it does hurt us too, because like the fishermen and soybean farmers, they got pretty hurt by it too.
That's it's a second thing, but I was listening to NPR. It sounds like I do a lot of NPRing, but
Yeah.
on the
Avid
radio they were
NPR.
talking about these beef farmers. They were saying Trump's trade war hurts farmers, American farmers. And
Yeah.
when you hear that, you think, oh, old McDonald, he's on his farm. But then you hear that he's an international beef farmer who's shipping beef to China. That's not old McDonald.
Well, but there are still some old McDonald's out there. I saw a
There
YouTube
are, but
video
they're not
about
affected by the-
lobster fishermen who are being really affected by most of their sales are being hit hard by small businesses who do
They
lobstering.
can sell in America. They must be marking that stuff up heavy. I mean, anybody in America that's selling to China that then you're going to make me feel patriotically bad about, I don't feel bad about. You know what I mean?
No.
I mean,
Can you say that again?
It's hypocritical. It's like, oh, you love Americans, right? You like farmers and fishermen, right?
Yeah.
Well, these farmers and fishermen are selling to China, and now they can't no more. Are they Americans or not? Like, shouldn't they? So they're small town American farmers,
But they're
and
not
fishermen.
actually small town American farmers
Right,
and fishermen.
exactly.
They're giant
They're just corporate
corporations.
conglomerates
Yeah.
that are
yeah.
getting their margins razored down a little bit. So I don't care.
Yeah, but on the other hand, though, is the trade war a good thing? Probably not.
No, it's not. Like geopolitically, yeah.
Right, geopolitically causing a lot of instability.
So that was the thing too, because they said how much China's economy is growing,
But people don't care, by the way.
compared to America's, and we can't compete with them because we operate in a different system. So their system is more controlled by the government. They can make a 10-year plan or something and
Oh,
say
yeah.
this is what's happening. So even if it is capitalist, it's still
There's a trajectory. There's a
trajectory,
priority list.
right.
Yeah.
Where in America, like, it's basically whatever corporation influences a politician to get into power. There's
Yeah.
no plan.
Yeah.
It's just corporations.
That's true.
So we are growing much slower. We're stagnating. Whereas
Yeah.
China is just like, we're going to the moon and we're going now, and you're all in line or you're not.
That's
Doing-
that's
yeah.
that's one thing in favor of China. I mean, China can snap its fingers and build a railway system that spans the entire country, a high-speed system in 5 years, and it's insane.
When you said they're not socialist.
No, what I said was
Okay.
they don't control the means of production.
Okay.
Okay, they do set priorities, and they do have
You don't think they influence the means of production by?
they do. They can tap things
They don't
one way or the
own
other.
the means of production.
They can
but they do-
incentivize things. They can provide incentives for certain things. They can set priorities. They can encourage in certain ways. But it's not like they actually own the means of production. And private companies, large private companies, exist, which need to have good relationships with the government, which have their own priorities and don't necessarily have to be totally in line with the 5-year plan.
But it's basically a economy that's in a petri dish rather than
I think
like a wilderness or an ecosystem.
more in some ways, but
Yeah.
there's so many different companies. You know, I am in a Chinese company. We
Yeah.
have nothing to do with the Chinese government.
Spoiler alert.
Nothing to do with the Chinese government. There's the only time we have had to deal with the government was when someone complained about something and we had to go and deal with and resolve the complaint with one of the bureaus, and it was not a big deal. But so there are some companies which are much more closely aligned with the government.
That's what I
and
mean,
they
like, but I
operate
think
in the
that's-
government's
yeah.
behalf. Big
Well, the ones
companies
they
like
mentioned in
Huawei,
the-
for sure, Huawei is a big one.
Huawei and
Yeah,
the
they're
ones they
basically a
mentioned,
proxy.
the auto companies are basically state run as far as their directives and what they're doing.
And the companies that produce
Technology
train
and-
ones, yeah,
hmm
yeah.
And those are the big ones, and that has a lot to do with steel.
Yes, but I would want to draw the line between when you say control the means of production, it sounds like the government owns all companies, and they can tell what all companies what to do.
I think the fact is, though, in China,
case.
the government can control anything it wants to, whereas in America, it cannot.
They can certainly step in. For example, they stepped
exactly.
in.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
If they choose, if your company had gotten in a quibble with them and they decided you were wrong, I mean, you'd be shut down if they wanted.
Here's a good example.
There's no Supreme Court in China.
There's a really good example, I think. There's a company called Didi Dache, which is basically Uber in China, and it's a Chinese company. Uber came to China, and there was this giant war between Uber in China and Didi in China. The war ended when the Chinese company Didi bought Uber out and completely vanquished them in a day. That happened for a lot of money. They did buy them, so the Uber people got money too. But
compensated.
But the reason they were able to win is because they were a Chinese company who had curated the relationships with the government officials. They had the policies of the government would favor them. So the government can set policies that favor them because they're a Chinese company and they want the Chinese company to win.
That's
foreign
exactly
American
what
company.
they said in the
But
documentary.
they don't come in and shut down Uber. The government doesn't say, Uber,
I know,
you're not
but
allowed
you have
to
to
operate.
understand
But
what I'm saying, though.
they can give Didi 5 little treats that they don't give to Uber.
Well, yeah, maybe I used the wrong terminology, but basically, it's almost like the North and the South in the Civil War. The South subsisted on slave labor, and the North was on the power of industry and technology. So the North, it's different because there's different morals associated with both of those things. But you have two different economies with two different engines. One's slave power, obviously morally wrong, and then there's one that's on industry, which is the wave of the future, technology. And that's kind of how it is with China and America, minus the morality aspects. China is almost because I wonder if the future might be more socialist or more government controlled, more dystopian, in that if you really want to harness the potential of technology, there must be more control. Capitalism might be phased out, almost like slave using agrarians were. You know what I mean? And they're zooming ahead, and now we're over here, and we're trying to fight with these little tariffs and stuff. It would be nice if free thinking, free people could win out, but it might be people that are really harnessing the new technology are going to ride this thing past everybody else.
But I think that's another one of those things where it's sort of capitalism and socialism make you think of certain things that then cause you to jump to an end conclusion, because capitalism is a great self-contained engine to produce the best possible thing within a short period of time at the expense of everything else, at the expense of equality, at the expense of cleanliness, at the expense of balance and fairness, at the expense of everything. It is a wonderful engine for rocketing ahead. And I think maybe China uses the engines of capitalism, but gives taps here and there with incentives, not as though, because if it's totally like government owned, then basically if you ask the government to make a cell phone, they're not going to produce an iPhone within 10 years. It's going to look the same in 10 years. But if you harness the people's ingenuity and get them to compete with other companies and have that sort of engine operating, but then provide the taps here and there where necessary and the regulation here and there where necessary, then it's not capitalism or socialism.
It isn't. I'm not saying if I was saying China would do something like that, I'm not saying it would be socialism. I think Andrew Yang quoted Eric Weinstein and said that who said people that believe in capitalism didn't know that capitalism's younger brother or son or offspring would eat itself, and that son or offspring is technology. So capitalism produced something so great that it was better than itself, which is technology. And it might be now that whether or not China is socialism or whatever it is politically, it might be harnessing technology better than the capitalists can.
That's true.
And that's where it's going to zoom ahead.
That's true.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't then be logical to then say, therefore, capitalism is a bad thing and shouldn't be used anymore, because
I'm not
you
saying
still
I'm not
have
thinking anything
the
of the
value
sort.
of competition
I'm just wondering
still
about what's gonna
operates. Right.
Yeah, but I mean, what if?
Thank you.
Mushroom.
Piece of candy.
Mushroom. Are you the product of China?
Mushroom, what do you think about the trade war?
So bad.
Yeah.
China?
Trade war is bad.
Oh, what about technology?
What about technology?
Technology 可以。
Technology is
Mushroom.
okay.
Mushroom, I haven't seen you in so long. How are you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing?
Kate says, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
She said she's doing good. Oh, you can hear that.
I'm glad someone is. Yeah, I can hear that.
Gabe's got a yellow hat.
That's green.
It's yellow.
Say green.
It's like a lime yellow. And I just want to say I'm not advocating McDonnell Douglas. It's a arms contractor. I think that they're making helicopters in this picture.
Luke is
regular
wearing
Bob
makeup.
Ross.
But not because of the podcast. I'm wearing foundation because I was doing some videos earlier.
I thought about putting some foundation on so I won't hate.
I use foundation when I do courses because I don't want to have
Sorry.
imbalanced complexion. I
Skin
Use
tones?
my
Well, that's the
foundation.
reason. Yeah.
I want to be as honestly ugly as I am.
Well,
Not-
yeah, I
not
would
really.
if
I
it were
wish-
just
I
for the
wish I could-
podcast. But this courses live forever.
I don't have any foundation, but I have some makeup that I use for my old man character in my movie that I used yesterday. So it could have functioned as foundation. And I had some red spots here, and I thought about putting some on. But
Your lighting
I
is
thought,
so bad that I couldn't even notice it. I think.
That's how I ended up getting around that problem. Was my bad lighting.
Problem solved, Gabe.
What are you chewing on? What did she give you? Drugs?
Piece of candy. Piece of candy. Piece of
Pizza
candy.
candy?
So what?
Pepperoni?
There's one thing that I agree with most of the political commentators. I disagree with them about, and that is that they say, if it comes down to Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, I think Cenk Uygur, I think Kyle Lewinsky, he would probably, they would probably vote. They might vote for Biden.
I would never
Or
vote
Trump,
for Biden.
but I wouldn't.
Biden?
Would never vote for Joe Biden.
He
I would
is
never.
obviously like.
I would never vote
completely-
for someone unless I really, really, really liked them. I would. Otherwise, I wouldn't.
He has no content. He's a hollow shell. I don't think Kyle Kalinske would vote for him. I bet Cenk Uygur would.
Yeah.
I mean, because he has.
Well, Cenk Uygur said as much. He's said.
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about him. He's just like he's a non-character to me. I don't care what he thinks. I think Kyle has value. I don't think Cenk has any value. But as far as Biden, I don't. It would be an interesting. I think Trump is going to win almost no matter what, even against Andrew Yang, maybe. But I think Andrew Yang has the only chance of beating him. Period. Elizabeth Warren will lose.
Yeah, she would probably lose. Unfortunately,
Biden would lose.
Biden
I
would
do
lose.
think
Biden
Bernie
would lose
will
hardcore.
lose. Bernie will lose because
I don't know about
Bernie
that.
has proven himself. See, no, Bernie could have won in 2016, I believe, because Trump wasn't established, and they were both riding waves of momentum that would have carried through. So anything that was going into Hillary would have gone into Bernie. That is no longer there, and it's Bernie is a pushover, and he's too nice, and Trump will trounce him, and he'll call him a socialist, and it will work. It will.
maybe I
Trump-
don't know. Do you think Trump is definitely stronger this time around?
Well, I mean, he won, so that was pretty strong the first time.
I know,
but
you
I
think but he won because he was against
even
Hillary.
you could look. I think you can look to odds makers, people in Las Vegas, because those people work the same way you're talking about Jung before, being completely not optimistic, but objective. about the reality of the situation. If there's anybody that's objective, it's an odds maker in Las Vegas, right? Betting on something.
Yeah, ideally.
And
yeah.
and they all think Trump's going to win by a long shot. And I think based on what's going on, he's going to win by a long shot. The only thing that will take him down is if he gets entangled in a foreign war, or if somebody really comes along, or the economy crashes, foreign war,
Or someone comes out of nowhere.
or somebody comes out of nowhere like Andrew Yang, and that's it. Because Bernie doesn't have the momentum he had before.
I think
There's
Andrew Yang has the many of the right. I think he's interesting because he has a lot of support from people on the right. It's hard to
Who are the Democratic people? Because I want to disregard them too. We talked about Beto O'Rourke before.
Beto,
he has nothing.
Beto O'Rourke, or
He's
as Kyle
gonna be done
Kalinske said,
soon.
I like his names. Bet on my stork. I like the names he makes. I think they're funny.
Beto O'Rourke. Cory Booker, nothing.
I think
Kamala Harris is like
Doofus.
weak. Like, yeah. I can't think of anybody else. I know they're all
Mayor
stuff,
Pete.
but-
Mayor Pete.
Oh, Pete Buttigieg.
Mr. Diversity.
Buttigieg. No.
No way.
I mean, he's only there because he's being propped up by the media.
Yeah, he's like
Nobody likes him.
He's like a wet rag that's being held up by sticks, and someone's working the strings.
I looked into him because I was wondering why he was popular, and I looked into his history. Have you ever looked into his history?
Haven't taken the time to do that.
I wish I could remember all the details of it, but he went to law school. I think he went to Harvard.
If this were Joe Rogan, we'd do some right now research and Google some untrustworthy.
Jamie, can you pull that up?
Can you pull up that
Cool
untrustworthy website? Let's spread this news that might be fake to millions of people.
Cool boy. He has actually Cool boy's walking over there right now.
Seriously,
Cool boy, can you pull this up?
that's quite risky. They just look at websites and like spread stuff that could be totally untrue. They don't know what they're looking at. What's this website? Is the
Joe
Gringle,
Rogan's still great.
The gringle.pringle.net.
I'm going to be my own.
I like Joe Rogan.
My own.
I just think it's hilarious that they do their research on the fly.
I am Jamie right now. I'm pulling it up myself. So he worked for a company called McKinsey and Company, which is an American worldwide management consulting firm, and they basically consult for a lot of major corporations around the world, and they've been into a lot of shady shit. They're involved with like U.S. intelligence agencies and whatnot. Anyway, so he worked for them. That's normal. You go to Harvard, you work for McKinsey and Company, which has all these high-level corporate and government figures in it, and then after that, you join the military, which he joined the Navy Intelligence Service. So he's in U.S. intelligence.
And then you become a sweet little mayor.
And then you're the best mayor, and you save all the dogs and the cats from the trees, and you
learn Yiddish, Swedish,
and then you're a regular American everyman. After that, it's like 3 out of 3 there. You're with these corporate assholes. You're in U.S.
So he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Is that what you're saying, Gabe?
I am saying that, and nobody's talking about that.
He's a Bisley Bear.
He's like the most obvious Bisley Bear I've ever seen before.
He's a Bisley Bear He's trying to disguise himself as just another kid on the playground.
In a bear's smock, he walks around.
Well, Kevin, you quite a lot bigger than you were yesterday. Nope, just me, Kevin, another one of the kids at this school.
He's the same bear.
It's Bisley Bear.
Well, people are going to take some sort of like a gay euphemism for that, since he's
What? No, I'm talking about Bisley Bear. Bisley Bear is he's a menace. He's a danger. He's in it for the protein.
Speaking of like conspiracies about people and bears, you ever watch Owen Benjamin? He's the worst, right?
I don't know who that is.
Well, maybe he's not the worst, but he's very out there.
Don't know who he is.
He was on Joe Rogan like 2 or 3 times. He's a comedian from LA, and he has a following on YouTube, which I guess unfortunately my clicks have led to. and he's a guy that just does nothing but conspiracies about people and has a following about everybody in Hollywood's a pedophile, which that might actually be true. And all these politicians are evil, so on and so on. But he seems like he's kind of descending into madness. It's been interesting to watch. Everybody he used to like, he hates. He hates Joe Rogan now. He was on his show, but now he hates him. Joe Rogan's evil. He used to love Jordan Peterson. Now Jordan Peterson's evil.
Wow, I have to look up this guy. Sounds like a interesting character.
But his he calls himself like a bear or something, and people that follow him are also bears, which is interesting too, because he doesn't like gay people and he doesn't like Jewish people. So he's anti-Semite and he's anti-gay,
What?
but he's also a bear. Yeah.
I've
You
never
probably
even
know
heard-
him when you
I've
see
never
his
even
face.
heard of
Owen
this.
Benjamin.
No, I'm looking at him right now. I no bells are ringing.
Really?
I'll do
Well,
some looking.
I'm sorry to bring it into your YouTube feed. You should just
I'll
avoid
open it up on another feed so that it doesn't taint my filter bubble.
I
I
guess
wouldn't
the
want
thing
that to
about him
happen.
is I can see some of the things that he's saying seem to be true, but a lot of them are not, and they're not good. Like a lot of anti-Semitism, I don't agree with,
Yeah.
and a lot of anti-gay people stuff, I don't agree with. But as far as like Hollywood pedophiles, I think he's probably right. Yeah. Anyway, negative subject.
Negative subject. It's bringing me down. I gotta go watch my my Marble Machine X videos to cheer myself up again. Oh, I can't wait for Wednesday.
Is that when they come out?
Yeah, I look forward
Fitting
to
that
it.
it would be on the most pointless day of the week.
Exactly, Gabe. That's right, David.
I'm sorry.
Last question of the day.
This is it?
Yeah,
We're done?
we hit over 2 hours.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, we got to
I
pick
think
it up
last-
though. I think we got to continue another. We got to choose another time. Do it again. I think we've covered a lot of territory though. It's been fun.
It's
I
think
cut out the part where you
the
went to
content
pee.
on this one.
I'll cut out the part where
I
you
went to
took a
the
pee
bathroom.
break. Yeah,
I think that's the only part you should put in.
put in. Yeah.
I think our content this time has been a little better than last time.
Well, last time it was kind of a downward spiral. Well, it really was. It was true. It was the first try. You know, it was the first try. We tried it, and
If at first you don't succeed,
try once again. One more time.
only one time more.
One more time. If at first you don't
And it-
succeed, try once more, and if it goes badly the second time, quit and do something else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or nothing. Just stop.
Yeah. Do nothing else.
What was your what was your last question?
Logical conclusion. AI runs the stock market now, and it self-corrects market trends, and the stock market is probably better for it. AI government?
I would love that. Yeah.
There's no appeal. I mean, appeal process is what I mean by that.
I think it's very tricky, but the issue that we're facing right now is are we going to destroy ourselves before AI can take over and save us? Kind of.
That's a very dark way to look at it. We're on the way down. We need to be destroyed by our new zookeepers.
Well, yeah, I mean,
It's sort
what
of
we were
like
talking about
saying
before.
the end of the world is coming. Will we destroy ourselves before the end of the world comes? The end of the world being the AI destroying us.
It's kind of like what I was saying before about UBI. Like when
Yeah.
people were living in caves, and what were we hoping to ever achieve? And now that we have the fruits of that success, will any of us get to eat it?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. Are we
Star
going
Trek
to-
universe is the ideal then, right?
Yes, absolutely. But are we going to get there before we destroy ourselves? Which, interestingly, they did that in Star Trek universe before they got to their
Right. They had to go
warp
through.
drive. Yeah.
They had to go through. Yeah, they went through the Third World War, and
Which I actually, it's weird how accurate Star Trek is, but it kind
Yeah.
of seems like that's going to
so
be
yeah,
happen.
the history was it's sort of like they had this worldwide war that sort of showed everyone how rotten everything was, and then from the ashes of that, a hopeful technology came
Because
out
the
of that.
technology
The warp
hangs around
drive
on yeah,
that
you
made
can't
us
destroy
realize that we
everything.
live in a larger universe, visited by Vulcans for the first time, aliens now, we're part of a larger universe, broader consciousness. Let's move forward with that.
Mhm. Yeah, I could see that being the scenario that actually plays out,
I don't
something
know.
like that.
I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. I don't disagree, though, about if Trump were president for another 4 years, that would necessarily be, it's probably pretty controversial to say, but I'm not sure that that's a bad thing. It might be a further demonstration of, man, but at the end of that 8 years, we will know what the problems are. They'll be clearly defined.
I will say it on the record. I am firm on that. For me, it would be, I don't know if I can actually bring myself to vote for Trump, but
Yeah,
Andrew Yang or
that's
Trump.
yeah.
I want good or bad. I don't
Yeah.
want bullshit. Nothing in between.
Yeah.
Just
Not a
always
nuclear
thought-
war, though, please. Thank you. Hopefully. Jeez.
I guess, but sometimes when I look at YouTube, I do want a nuclear war or something.
What? That's extreme.
No, I don't. I'm sorry. I don't know. I just don't know where all this wonderful technology is going. Like, what is it leading us to? It's all the progress. It still seems dystopian, doesn't it? Like, what is fulfilling about it besides the marble machine that makes music?
That's it. That's why it's so great.
I mean,
it's
you
the
live
only
in
thing.
New York. You live in New York, and you basically are only in your apartment. I mean, what is good about the world
I go for
besides
walks.
the marble? Yeah.
I get
Yes,
my
but-
sweat coins.
If you live in New York and you have to get sweat coins to feel joy,
I get no joy from
is
sweat
that
coins.
not dystopian? That's the kind of dystopia I'm talking about.
I find fulfillment in work, though.
Yes. Well, that's
Work
good.
brings me meaning, purpose, fulfillment.
In the temporary, in the moment.
No, I'm day to day. I'm a very satisfied person. I have no depression.
Yes.
I don't.
Well, day
I
to
don't
day,
suffer.
yeah.
Everything seems great. Not everything seems great, but I mean, I don't know many people who are more satisfied than myself. The people I meet seem more miserable than me.
You're doing well.
The people
I'm
I
not
meet
saying
seem
it's
more
wrong.
miserable than I am. It's true. I do stay in my apartment,
Well,
and from the
you're an
outside that
anomaly,
looks dystopian. But
You are a whirlpool of goodness on
I
the
feel
pond.
so excited to get up every morning and tackle the projects that I'm working on.
You feel strongly about them, like what you're doing. You're
yeah,
happy about them.
I'm slaying monsters. I'm building things. I'm
Clean your room, buddy.
I'm doing things. I'm living a very satisfying life in that sense. Struggle, but interesting.
That's good.
So dystopian, it may be an external thing. What about the individuals in the society? That's the more important question. But I think, yeah.
That's a very good point, because I think no matter what's happening in the world, maybe the most important thing is what's going on in your own mind, no matter what situation you're faced with.
I have a very contrarian view of cell phone use. A lot of people, Simon Sinek, these kids is on their damn phones on Instagram, everything. Everybody's against being on your phone too much. Well, maybe that's just the new normal. Maybe that is just a new, there many things were new and scary at first, and now they're just the new normal. I mean, is it true that someone who lives in the countryside and has no technology is necessarily a happier and more satisfied, fulfilled person? Maybe in 50 years, when we're all living in a VR world, we find the deepest fulfillment there. Maybe it's totally dystopian externally.
Yeah,
if you were to watch a movie about it, but maybe I don't know. I don't know that that's not.
None of us know for sure.
Yeah.
But the thing about that, which I oftentimes agree with, is that sometimes, bubbles burst, and we are in, just like when you look down at a petri dish and you see things swarm around, and to us it's in fast motion, but to them maybe it's a million years. Things do change. The Earth was once not here,
Yeah.
and now it is. So there are things that are going to be physically changed permanently, or existence exists now, and it might not always. Which the people I think that exist in some kind of existential strife are probably contemplating those questions, which are not less real.
Which questions?
The questions that there are a beginning and an end to things, obviously. And that's a fact. So it's nice to feel good. But if you know that there is a beginning and end to things, and it like weighs upon you, it's kind of tough to get out from under that. That's all.
I don't know. Everyone knows that there's a beginning and an end. That's what
I know.
makes. If there was no end, then there would be no purpose.
Right.
It's in Alan Watts.
It's just a question of how much can you
truism.
enjoy yourself with that knowledge.
I don't like the word enjoy yourself. I think I don't like the
Enjoy
word
your
happy.
time.
I don't like happy either. I don't like I don't believe in happiness. I don't believe in joy either. I believe in finding purpose. I think that purpose is the most important thing in life to discover. What is my purpose?
What's
Because
the
if you have
purpose of doing something? What's the Woody Allen thing, right?
Purpose on an absolute scale probably doesn't exist in any sense, but finding purpose in the human sense of finding a challenge or something that can be grappled with that feels meaningful and seems meaningful is maybe all there is. Even if that thing, but think about, a monk who has lived their entire life in an incorrect religion, let's say, something that's totally wrong, but they've lived in the deepest sense of purpose. The guys who maybe did the ornamentation, the all of the stencil work and the drawings in the Bibles, right? And then those guys probably every day was it. Man, I can't wait to finish page 67. I'm gonna put a dragon here. There's gonna paint it. They're thinking about that all day.
The beer that they brew.
They're brewing beer. To us, they're ready to go. What is this banal nonsense? Who cares about page 67?
Yeah, it's a
right?
very finite world, very contained. Yeah.
Nobody's life is important, and it doesn't have to be important on some external scale because there is no viewer. There is no man in the machine outside of anything. So if you have
unless there is, right?
If there is, but maybe that's a different conversation. But if you find purpose and passion in a problem, and each day you look forward to it, and it gives you a sense of fulfillment, and when you look back on it 10 years later, you go, "Wow, yes, I really did something that's worthwhile," and that turns out to be totally incorrect. Maybe it's not even right in some grand scale. It's wrong, but still gratifying and still meaningful. That's, I think, the greatest thing that you could do. So one of the reasons I
bet it is the greatest thing that you could do. I mean, that's a very
you don't care about
quote.
The marble machine, but he cares about the marble machine, and it every day seems to be filled with meaning and purpose.
I respect that, like a relative appreciation of absolute goodness or truth has value, and it almost adds to the absolute value of the world. But if you want to believe in and you don't think that it has actual value outside of yourself, then I think the whole thing would be like a frivolity. It'd be a nonsense.
Everything
mission.
is a frivolity.
Like, what's the point if there is no point?
The existence of humanity
Well,
is
then
a
you're a
frivolity.
nihilist.
Well, no, we've talked about this. We've already had this conversation. Nihilism is specifically...
Well, obviously we're not done then.
Man, we already talked about this, but we'll have to re-explore it another time.
Meaning either means something or it doesn't.
God, we always
It's a
come back
binary.
here. We always come back here. I'm an absolute
either means
nihilistic.
something
I'm an
or it
absolute
doesn't mean
nihilist.
something.
I'm an absolute nihilist and a relativistic anti-nihilist.
And you say that with certainty?
I say it with conviction.
Conviction against what absolute? What do you reference your relative nothingness against? In your
Subjective
relative certainty.
Subjective experience.
Well, your opinion means nothing compared to mine because my opinion is referencing an absolute ideal.
But that's a relative conjuring that you've got there. Your relative conjuring of an absolute
No,
ideal
unless
that
it's
may or
true.
may not be true. Maybe it is. But
It
maybe
is, but
maybe it
only
isn't.
one of us has something to win.
Huh?
Only one of us has
I don't
something
need to
to
win. I don't believe in winning. Winning is not the goal of this particular game.
I agree with that too. Like in life, there
Finding
is no
purpose.
reason to.
Finding purpose is all there is.
It's a good mode and a good mindset, but
I don't think there's
I don't know
anything
what
else.
the mattering is.
I don't think there's anything else. I don't think there is more mattering. So
Well, there fucking better be.
I really don't think there is. I think absolutely, totally, no point. Relative in terms of experience, what it
I don't
feels
think
like
you
to be
believe that.
alive, living with other people on the day-to-day scale, on the here and now Buddhist path, that day to day. I think there is great meaning, great purpose, magic, importance, temporary, temporal. Ultimately, doesn't matter because I will never get to
Ultimately,
be
it
on.
doesn't matter because what is because referencing? Because what?
Because none of us are going to be around to know whether or not it's true.
Around. Okay.
Because we're all just going to fizzle out of existence one day, and then that's it.
That's depressing.
Well, it's probably true. I hope I'm wrong about that, but that's probably right.
That's what I mean. Like, if that's true, aren't you depressed? Like, why would you be happy about
that?
anything
Gives me
if that was true.
That makes me that constant belief in that reality makes the day to day even more powerfully meaningful to me. The not the conviction,
Excitement
but the
and
belief,
relative meaning.
the belief that probably at the moment of my death, that's it for me. That's it for my consciousness. There's nothing else.
I've contemplated that.
I've contemplated that all the time, and it's always over my head. I think about it every single day. It gives, I would argue, even more meaning to life.
In the being in,
Yes.
I can see. Yes.
In the being is all there is, probably. And if I'm wrong about that, that's great news. But I don't need to do the Pascal's wager where I just bet on the fact that there's something out there. I don't need to do that particular bet because I don't see any principles worth betting on, right? So I might as well just go with, from what I can tell, at the top level, from the highest perspective looking down, we live on a tiny blue speck. It's gonna die. It's gonna be burned to a crisp by by a red giant someday. Humanity will have come and gone. Maybe our descendants are in spaceships. Maybe not. Regardless, I'm not gonna be here anymore. But while I was here, just like the monks who lived in the 12th century, I had meaning. I had purpose. I had
that wasn't
something
their
to hold on
meaning.
to.
The monks in the 12th century. I mean,
all
that stuff. That, like, for me as well. That's not enough why for me.
Okay.
To exist.
But if you assert a higher why, that doesn't make it a true why. That makes it an assertion of a why. That also gives you purpose in life. So great. That's yours. So for the monks who believed in a higher power and got meaning and spiritual fulfillment from that higher power, let's say that higher power was the flying spaghetti monster. It doesn't matter because if they believe it truly, then it gives them the spiritual the purpose.
That's a straw man argument.
Okay, well, let's say Hindus then. Okay, you would probably say that Hindu gods are not real gods, right? Probably wouldn't agree with that.
No, I would say they're like real spirits.
Real spirits. Okay, so how about the Greek gods? Also real spirits.
Sure.
Okay.
So
all gods are real.
Seems like it's dramatically inclined.
All gods are real. Then.
No, but you talked about Hindu god. The Greek god seems to be like.
Which god
those
do you
are all
not?
Like
which god do you not believe in?
I believe in one god, but I believe that other people are corresponding to like spiritual inclinations. I guess.
Has anyone ever believed in a false god?
We're going back to the conversation about terms.
Has anyone ever believed in a god that doesn't exist?
I don't even know how to define God, let alone what people believe in.
Okay, so let's hypothetically say that someone fervently believes in a higher power, and that particular higher power, with the attributes that they've given it, doesn't exist in any
Yes.
on any level. No ontological reality there. Each day is filled with fervor, passion, going
Yeah.
to their neighbors and spreading the word.
That
doing
would be
coloring,
what you're
making
talking about.
coloring books about.
That sounds like what you're describing about your day.
Yeah, that's what that's everyone's day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even if and I would then go a step further and say all gods
You're
are
your
the
God.
made up one. I would go a step further and say all gods are that one, the made up one. And
Right.
if in the purpose you get the fulfillment is not some sort of line of spirituality that's injecting or pumping purpose into you from some divine source, I would say you believe in something that doesn't exist on any level, and it gives you, your belief in that gives you purpose and passion the same way that the Marble Machine X guy has purpose and passion because he believes in that. It's the same shit. It's just a different.
Exactly why I hate the Marble Machine guy so much.
Same-
because I see
same
such
thing.
lack of
Same thing. There's no difference. There seems like
That's
a difference.
why you like the Marble Machine Man. That explains it.
There is no difference. People who believe in God, people who are
I
religious,
see a huge difference.
religious people are filled with purpose and passion about their religion. What they believe in is not real. Probably.
No, it's a construct with which to filter experience through.
Yeah, and it's not real. I mean, there is no realness.
No,
to it.
it may or may not be.
Yeah, it's not. Probably.
I mean, well, it's a way to interpret the world.
Yes.
We talked about this before.
There are so many
there's just
different ways
all
to
these
interpret
different
the-
ways to
Yes,
interpret the world. But right,
yes.
but the one that seems to matter the most to people is the one in which meaning lies. Right.
Yes.
Like we talked about before, babies that get killed and stuffed in bags and whatever, and their heads get mashed up. It's just a bunch of matter. It doesn't matter. But I'm talking about gross things. Where you.
I was
Spanish.
doing that because I had a burp and it tasted like lasagna.
Okay. There's nasty things that happen in the world, but they seem more nasty because there's some inherent quality of nastiness to them. The way in which the world makes the most sense to us is the allegorical, spiritual realm of reality, not the scientific.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We
It's-
have
it
a
is-
hungering
right,
for
yes,
the spiritual, and Jung would have a lot to say about that.
To understand that that's the most that is the realm of reality which actually makes sense
But
to
that
me,
doesn't
which actually matters most. The one that controls my actions.
But yes,
And then to say my actions are only my own and my actions are of the physical and not of some external quality doesn't actually make sense to me.
Right.
If the allegorical quality of the universe or the metaphysical or spiritual is the one that actually drives us the most, then why would I reduce it to be completely unspiritual and
because you can have the same experience that doesn't tap into the necessarily some
why?
divine
Because everything
characteristics.
everything that
Because-
informs the allegorical level is feeling and has nothing to do with
No,
reality.
there's nothing wrong with feeling. I would say we're talking about the sockets, right? We've got a little socket for violence. We got to tick that check mark. We've got a
No,
there's
so
a
you're
beautiful
science-
passage. Can I read something to you? I'm going to read you a quote from Carl Jung that I consider to be dope, the dopest of dopes.
Dope AF.
It's dope AF, my bro. I'm going to read you this passage.
Gucci Mane.
I'm going to read you this passage game.
I'm listening to him.
Get ready.
I'm ready.
And then we're going to call it a day.
Yeah, we're done after this. We got to be done. How long have we been on the air? I mean, we're not live.
2 hours and 35 minutes.
Jeez, oh, fuck.
I think it's going pretty well. It's been a huge hit so far.
Smash.
All the live viewers are loving it. All right.
This is for all the people.
Just
out
as
there that
primitive
drink up
man
on
was
Ice
able
Circus.
to with the aid of religious and philosophical symbol just as primitive man was able with the aid of religious and philosophical symbol to free himself from his original state, so too the neurotic can shake off his illness in a similar way. It is hardly necessary for me to say that I do not mean by this the belief in a religious or philosophical dogma should be thrust upon the patient. I mean that the patient has to reassume the psychological attitude which in an earlier civilization was characterized by the living belief in a religious or philosophical dogma. But the religious philosophical attitude does not necessarily correspond to the belief in a dogma. A dogma is a transitory intellectual formulation. It is the result of the religious philosophical attitude and is dependent upon time and upon circumstances. The attitude is itself an achievement of civilization. It is a function that is exceedingly valuable from a biological viewpoint, for it creates the incentives that force human beings to do creative work for the benefit of a future age, and, if necessary, to sacrifice themselves for the welfare of the species. Almost done. Thus, the human being attains the same sense of unity and totality, the same confidence, the same capacity for self-sacrifice, and this conscious existence that belongs unconsciously instinctively to wild animals. So basically, it's not about the belief. It's not about the reality of the belief.
No,
True or
that's
not,
not what he said.
no,
That's not what
it's
he
just
said.
the attitude of having a sense of the spiritual and our craving for that. That check
He
mark is
said
we
that
have
was potentially the same. This thing is the same as this thing, and it can be used in such a way. But it had nothing to say about the spiritual phenomena.
It's the no. He's saying he's saying
No, he's talking about religious belief,
Yes.
not
Religious
belief
religious
in
belief.
spirituality. He was talking more about dogma than he was about spiritual phenomena.
He's saying a belief in a dogma or a religious belief was a positive thing.
Dogma is an entirely.
He's talking about an attitude, the attitude of having a sense of
Yes,
spirituality and
you
spiritual
have a dogma
fulfillment.
of non-spirituality.
Yes,
I
and it
have
gives-
no dogma.
No,
No.
the
I'm
point-
just a being
the core-
believing something. I have no dogma.
the
I'm not
fundamental
part of any club.
the fundamental point is a spiritual attitude, right? So that's
No,
another
it's
one
not
of our
the fundamental point.
another
Where
one
did
of
he
our-
mention that? Go back to your quote.
a fundamental check mark. Basically, the point is
No,
there's
no.
a fundamental.
No, you are trying to mold something, which it is not, into something that fits your point. So go back and find what you said.
Let me make my point first and then go back. My point is, just as we have that maybe check mark of violence that we need, we've got a check mark for something spiritual, whatever that is.
Yes, we have a
right?
nature for needing a spiritual
and
thing.
violence and other things as well.
Some
many
people
other
pick
things.
atheism. Some
Yes.
people pick spirituality
Well,
or like a religion.
Put aside
Yeah.
the dogma part of it for a second. It's the attitude. So the reality of it on the grandest scale is unimportant. It's
That's not what he said.
no. He's saying no. He's saying that the attitude we need. He's saying basically, without some sort of
You're
belief in something, we have a
conflating
hole.
A very specific thing he was talking about dealing with patients into a worldview that has no relation. So I reject your hypothesis.
You mean to read it again?
I don't. I've heard it. It was boring. He was just talking about patients.
He was talking about how the religious attitude is what helped us rise out of our primitive state.
That's what he first started off with, yes. But he
Yeah.
was talking about how they were interchangeable in certain ways with patients and how you deal with them and how you can use it.
Yes, but that's not to say anything about the reality of it. Right? It's just
And
a
it has
useful.
nothing to do with like spirituality or it just
I would say it
doesn't
is spiritual.
relate to the-
A religious attitude is what I would.
No, a
equals-
dogma is the
religious
opposite of
attitude
spiritual.
equals spirituality. Why wouldn't it? That's what it is.
Dogma and spirituality would be like industriality versus
What dogma side? Religious attitude and spirituality.
well, religious
are the same.
attitude is dogma.
Religious
having
attitude is spirituality, not dogma.
no, it's not.
Well, how is
Spirituality
spirituality-
is phenomena in emotion.
I don't think
It's
he didn't
actually
define
being
it
in
that
the
way.
moment. No,
He didn't define it that
it's
way.
completely separate.
He's saying
There's
dogma
religious-
changes over
religious
time.
fervor-
It's
okay,
temporary.
let's say- let's take,
constantly changing.
You could take like say Catholics that are doing their calisthenics routine and crossing their hearts and whatnot,
Yeah.
and you could take people like shamans that are being overtaken by some sort of weird,
Yeah.
spirit.
hmm
Those are two separate things.
Yes.
Uh,
But the
not
same
nothing I'm
the
saying
same
anything
checkbox
good or
is
bad
being
about either of
checked.
them.
Checkbox.
No, I would not say. I would say the same check mark is being checked where like atheists are concerned. I do think everyone has. there is a hierarchy to the universe. You know, there's say there's God or like spiritual beings, demons and angels, humans,
Whoa,
animals.
what?
Yeah, no, I would.
Okay. So non-existent thing, non-existent thing, non-existent thing, humans, animals. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inanimate matter.
Yeah.
I'm saying there's potentially a level of spirit.
I don't know what
which
that
is,
means. Level of
that
spirit.
exists in all people.
Don't know what that
all
means.
things.
I have no idea what that means.
Well, we're done.
I think you missed. I think you might have missed Jung's point, though.
I don't care. I don't even want to exist in the same world. I believe in a hierarchy of spirit.
And that belief gives you meaning.
It goes
and
from
purpose.
God down to inanimate matter.
And whether or not, hypothetically, if that God that you just mentioned doesn't actually exist, your belief in that still gives you purpose. And that's my whole point. Is that your belief in it is the thing which gives you purpose and meaning, not the fact that it exists or not, probably.
No, I believe in belief the same way that you do. I think everybody actually believes in hierarchies the same way, but they make themselves God instead of
Yeah. But
another
you get my point, though?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that your sense of purpose is not coming from the reality of the
You're
fact
just
that
being
exists or not.
very postmodern, very reductive.
No, I'm just saying, like, congratulations for believing
check marking
that.
a box.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
well,
not
I mean,
postmodern.
some
It's
things
just
are true, some things are not, right?
yes.
You think you're God, or you think, like in your life, that you are the highest power that you will ever know,
No.
and I know that I'm not.
You believe that you're not.
I know that I'm. Yeah, well, yeah, I believe that I'm not.
I don't believe that I'm the
Yeah, it's
highest
more
power.
faith.
There might be aliens out there like Q from Star Trek who have super, they're
Well,
like
I mean,
gods.
that's
They're
just like-
essentially gods. There could be like gods out there. Maybe they're aliens who are very
Very
highly
interesting, yeah.
evolved. Yeah.
Data could
I'm
be out there. He could
cool
be,
with
he could
that.
have a pet cat.
Cool with that. But
Very
my whole
interesting.
point
It's
is
hard
that
to integrate with your
the
life.
thing that's giving you purpose is your belief in that structure, that hierarchy, not the existence of the thing itself. It doesn't have to exist for you to have the same purpose. And if I were to,
It makes sense to me morally, and I see that like morals are necessary to function. Otherwise, you become. I mean, you have to be. If you didn't believe a certain way, you would have no scruples. You know,
Yeah.
you wouldn't.
yeah, I think that's kind of the Jung point there. You got to have beliefs. Humans need beliefs. We got to believe in stuff. It gives us meaning.
We do have to have like a
Separates
God
us
of
from
structure,
animals.
Yeah.
We got to have a god, but that god doesn't have to exist. Thankfully,
It doesn't, but if it did, it implies something. So that's what I'm saying.
Right,
Like,
if it did.
if Jung is right, so
but that's
being here,
beside the
which
point.
being here is wacky enough. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but totally beside the point whether or not the god exists. Right. The whole point I was trying to say is the meaning that you derive from it is the most real thing there is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting sometimes. I think, yeah, there's like an inverse quality to like truth and existence or something. Like the closer you get to the truth, like it just doesn't work out. It doesn't
It's
help.
like the speed of light. Closer you get to the speed of light.
It doesn't help
Yeah.
to know. You're better off being an animal.
Right. Well, it doesn't help to know, but it does. But yeah, that's right. I wouldn't argue that belief is important. I think belief is important.
Mhm.
It's part of the diet, part of the salad.
But I mean, I guess truth. It's
If I could
weird.
take away, if I could wipe out all religious belief, I would not do it at all.
Yeah, but yeah, so it's weird. Like I actually wrote a song about it before. Like about like a mountain being truth and like a rock getting struck off the mountain, rolling down to the bottom, and people using it to make a ring around a fire and then keeping their hands warm. And they were using these rocks around the fire to the fire was absolute truth, and human beings needed the truth, but they couldn't get too close. And it seems like that's kind of the scenario of humanity with absolute truth. That's the Icarus story, Greek myth, right? The closer you fly to the sun, your wings melt off.
I think you'd really like Hero of a Thousand Faces. I think
Yeah, I
you'd
probably should
like
get
it
that.
a lot. I think you
I'd
would.
like it a lot. It'd be my new book.
I just think you'd like it so much, Gabe.
Guys, Hey, go to the Amish grocery store nearby and say, guys, have you seen my new book?
Hey guys, I got a book. It's new. It's good. I like it a lot. Can I get some? Can I get some honeycomb and some smelly goat cheese?
You guys have any questionable oils and non FDA type stuff? We're
Any
shutting you down.
scented
You're
bark
good.
that
I'm
I
undercover cop. You're under arrest.
Anything that can be burned in the home.
We should probably just end on that.
Yeah.
You good?